Chapter 582. Hence, she was so nervous that she was trembling all over. Even her eyelashes were trembling. The tears that welled up in her eyes quickly moistened her lashes and overflowed from the corners of her eyes. A line of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. This was undoubtedly a desperate and helpless kiss. Yin Shishir was completely immersed in her role. Every inch of her facial features, even her eyelashes, were full of dramatic tension. He stared at her with his eyes wide open. Even though he knew that she was acting and was fully immersed in her role, his heart still trembled violently because of this desperate kiss. His heart ached for her, and he felt a sense of reluctance and longing. Based on the character in the movie, he should have rejected and avoided the kiss. However, in his heart, it was difficult for him to push away Yin Shishir's kiss. Gu Xingzi couldn't help but reach out his arms, trying to embrace this uneasy and desperate girl in front of him. The assistant director, who was sitting beside the monitor, suddenly stood up with an ugly expression. Gu Xingzi was out of control. According to the script, his next move was to push her away violently. Instead of hugging her, he was about to interrupt when Lin Fengtian suddenly tugged at his sleeve and pulled him back to his seat. "Director Lin?" He lowered his voice, obviously puzzled. "Sure, don't speak." Director Lin was obviously surprised by the unexpected development of the plot. Even though there were some issues with the plot, due to a freak combination of factors, Lin Fengtian was surprised by the superstar's performance. "This is the feeling I want." Yin Dongyu also yearned for this kiss. He also loved Yin Xiaochuan, but unlike Yin Xiaochuan, who dared to love and hate, he was rational and would not allow himself to do anything immoral. Hence, when he found out that he had such strange feelings for Yin Xiaochuan, he immediately cut them off. He even went home with his female companions and kept a distance from Yin Xiaochuan. But even so, how could he not yearn for this kiss in his heart? It was this kind of contradictory handling that reflected the struggle in Yin Dongyu's heart. The struggle between ethics and feelings. Feelings were uncontrollable, weren't they? This way, the character could be portrayed more realistically and realistically. Zoom in and get a close-up of Yin Dongyu. Lin Fengtian added another camera. Originally, there was only a close-up of Yin Xiaochuan. It mainly reflected Yin Xiaochuan's despair and helplessness. Lin Fengtian added Yin Dongyu's camera, hoping to capture every change in his expression. In the camera, Gu Xingzi's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly realized that this was all an act. His outstretched arms paused in midair. Then, he pushed Yin Shishir away and stood up abruptly. He turned around with a pale face, and his face was filled with disbelief and shock. Yin Shishir was pushed away and fell on the piano. Her elbows pressed on the black and white keys, producing a discordant bass sound that was harsh and heavy, just like how the two of them were feeling right now. She stood up awkwardly and awkwardly. She laughed dryly and said with trembling lips, "Brother, why did you push me away? Don't you think this is ridiculous?" Gu Xingzi wiped his lips absent-mindedly. He could still feel the residual warmth of her lips. How was it ridiculous? How was it ridiculous? Chapter 583. Can I kiss you? You can't. Gu Xingzi was immersed in Yin Dongyu's role. He said in a low voice, flung her hand away, and walked to the window. "I can't either." "Why not?" Yin Xiaochuan stared at his back view with tears in her eyes. "I like you, and you like me. Isn't that enough?" She screamed the last sentence, almost breaking her voice. Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor, was so agitated that he was trembling. "It's so exciting. The tension is so strong. Oh my God, this Yin Shishir was really extraordinary." He hadn't misjudged her. On the screen, Yin Dongyu suddenly turned around and grabbed Yin Xiaochuan's shoulders tightly. His eyes were bloodshot, and he said crazily, "You're my sister, and I'm your brother. Do you understand? Why can't we? We shouldn't be together. Do you understand? Why can't we be together?" The young and ignorant Yin Xiaochuan didn't understand. She persisted, "I can't live without my brother. We have the same blood flowing in our bodies. We're siblings. If we're together, it's incest. It's incest. Do you understand?" Yin Dongyu stared straight at her, trying to wake her up. She suddenly laughed miserably. She grabbed his wrist and placed their wrists together. Is this the reason? Xiaochun stared at him with tears in her eyes. If this is the reason, then I'll cut it open with a knife and let the blood in my body drain out. Then, will it be enough? Shut up. Are you an idiot? Or are you threatening me? Dongyu covered her lips tightly, his heart thumping in fear at her angry words. Xiaochun suddenly broke down and threw herself into his arms. She cried weakly and helplessly, "But I don't want you to be with another girl. My heart will ache, my heart will ache. Brother, I like you. This is something that can't be helped. It would be great if it could be controlled, but there's no way to control it." Dongyu seemed to have lost all his strength. His arms hung limply by his side as he kept muttering, "We shouldn't be together. This can't happen. Brother." Xiaochun couldn't stop her tears from flowing down her cheeks and into the corner of her lips. She opened her mouth several times, wanting to say something, but stopped herself. Dongyu's heart ached as he hugged her. His brows were filled with heartache and conflict. There was also a hidden pain in his eyes, but he could not help it. This scene should have ended with this hug. However, Lin Fengtian did not shout, "Okay," or cut for a long time. The entire set fell into a dead silence. Without the director's orders, Yin Shishir didn't know how to proceed. Why hadn't Lin Fengtian given any orders when the scene had ended? Gu Xingze raised his head, but he was stunned. Yin Shishir also noticed his absent-mindedness and could not help but feel suspicious. She quietly turned her head and looked at Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor. She saw Lin Fengtian standing up straight, looking somewhat flustered and at a loss. He looked at the door with an ugly expression and his body stiffened. Yin Shishir was confused for a moment. She couldn't help but follow his line of sight and turned slightly to look at the door of the music room. The door was wide open. The night outside the window was dead and dark. Chapter 584. The man was dressed in a black shirt, as if he wanted to blend into the deep night. His entire body was emitting a terrifying and sharp aura. His entire body was covered in a thick, dark haze, almost causing everyone present to be unable to breathe. Muyaja. Yin Shishir was stunned. Immediately after, the dark panic almost made her sink into a swamp, almost suffocating her. The man stood at the door with both hands in his trouser pockets, looking sharp. His short black hair was messed up by the night wind, and it covered his eyes. However, it could not hide the murderous intent in his eyes, which seemed to have fallen into an ice cellar. His handsome face was cold and severe, and there was almost no expression on it. But his deep and handsome eyes were sharp, and the murderous look in them was like a cold knife in the cold night, ruthlessly stabbing her body, as if there was a sharp edge on her back. At that moment, Yin Shishir couldn't help but tremble, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back. The man raised his head slightly, raising his arrogant chin, and his thin lips curled into a cold and threatening arc. "Why aren't you continuing?" Yin Shishir's breathing stopped, but she didn't know how long he had been standing there and how much he had seen. But she comforted herself. She was an actress, and this was just acting. Why did she have to feel guilty? Acting shouldn't be taken seriously, right? Moreover, he was the one who betrayed her first, wasn't he? Didn't he also have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Wanru? His good fiancée even ran in front of him to show off her prowess. But at this moment, what was he? Was he angry? She wasn't angry yet. Shouldn't he be the one who should reflect on himself? Why was he looking at her like that, as if she had done something wrong? But even if she thought so, under the man's cold gaze, these seemingly righteous reasons were no longer valid. It was as if in the end, she was the one who had committed the most heinous crime. Her whole body stiffened, as if there was endless cold air rising from the soles of her feet. It was very exciting. "Why? Are you not acting anymore?" His voice was as cold as ice. It almost froze the atmosphere in the room to below zero. Everyone on the set couldn't help but shiver as their shoulders trembled in fear. Lin Fengtian, in particular, looked even worse. How did he appear here? According to the information he had gathered, he had an important acquisition and was flying directly to London, England, and would only be back in a few days. Muyaja stepped into the silent night, and slowly walked in. He stepped forward and she stepped back. He closed in step by step, and she retreated step by step. Muyaja's face was as cold as ice. It was frighteningly unfamiliar. Seeing that she was trying to hide behind Gu Xingze, he was so angry that he laughed. His black eyes flashed with blood-red laughter. "Come here." Although his voice sounded casual, every word he said was filled with a chilling intent. He ordered her to go over, but Yin Shirshi's feet seemed to be frozen by the cold air, as if they had taken root. She did not move for a long time. Her neglect made the displeasure and anger in his heart boil to the extreme. "Come here, this is the second time." Muyaja glared at her fiercely. If looks could kill, she wouldn't be regretful even if she died 10,000 times. Good, this woman, she was really good. He had only been in England for a few days, but she had blocked his number. He thought that something had happened and hurriedly booked a ticket to return home. But what about her? Chapter 585. Lin Fengtian was frightened and was thinking about how to put out the fire. First, he had to put out Muyaja's anger. Seeing that Muyaja had lost control of his anger and was approaching Yin Shishi, Lin Fengtian was frightened. Yin Shishi was so shocked that she retreated, her hands and feet cold. Gu Xingze saw Muyaja's murderous aura and immediately pulled Yin Shishi behind him to protect her. He watched Muyaja's every move cautiously. Lin Fengtian had a bad feeling. He rubbed his hands nervously and quickly stood in front of him before the situation got out of control. "Chairman Mu." Muyaja's footsteps paused for a moment as he lowered his head to give him a sidelong glance. "Chairman Mu, don't take it seriously. This kissing scene is all fake." Before Lin Fengtian could finish his words, Muyaja suddenly reached out and grabbed his collar, pulling him in front of him. "Do you think I'm a child? Fake? Who are you kidding?" His eyes were dark and his pupils constricted. "Didn't I tell you that all kissing scenes are forbidden? Did you take my words for granted?" Lin Fengtian swung his arm violently, and under the huge inertia, Lin Fengtian fell heavily to the ground, making a loud thud. The assistant director and a few of the crew members were shocked. They ran to Lin Fengtian's side and helped him up. Yin Shishi was shocked. Director Lin, she wanted to rush over to see if he had fallen badly, but Gu Xingze pulled her arm behind him. Yin Shishi was angry and glared at Muyaja. The latter sneered. "You still have the mood to care about others? Very good. Good, it was really a good scene." He had warned Lin Fengtian not to let Yin Shishi have any physical contact with any male actor. However, as a subordinate, Lin Fengtian actually disobeyed his orders. And what about his woman? What did he do when he was not in the country? Being intimate and loving with other male actors? Today he had bumped into him. What about the other times? What did she do behind his back? Muyaja's icy gaze slowly landed on Gu Xingze's hand that was tightly gripping Yin Shishi's arm. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister arc. Yin Shishi glanced at Lin Fengtian, whose face was filled with pain. Fear, panic, and self-blame attacked her at the same time. It almost gave people the illusion of suffocation. It was unavoidable. She had a clear conscience. Kissing scenes were just a normal part of filming. Everything she did was according to the script. Other than that, she maintained a perfect distance from Gu Xingze. She should have had a clear conscience. Yin Shishi gritted her teeth and said angrily, "Muyaja, what are you doing? What's the point of venting your anger on others?" Muyaja's pupils constricted, revealing a cold glint. "You also know that I'm very angry now?" Yin Shishi glared at him, her breathing rapid. He said again, "Come over here. I'll give you 3 seconds." So be it. She didn't do anything wrong, did she? She sucked in a deep breath of cold air and took a small step forward. However, she was stopped by Gu Xingze. Sure, don't go over there." Gu Xingze, on the other hand, was not afraid of Muyaja. He lifted his chin and met his cold gaze. "Muyaja, so this is how you force Sure. Muyaja's lips curled up coldly. "How affectionate." "Gu Xingze, you're really persistent," Muyaja retorted. The two of them stood facing each other. Ice and Fire. Chapter 586. The invisible collision of auras spread to every corner of the set. It was as if countless sharp blades were colliding in midair. Muyaja's cold gaze fell on the hand that was holding Yun Shirshir tightly. He said in a cold voice, "Take your hand away from her." Gu Xingze met his gaze expressionlessly. He was not afraid of his threat at all. Instead, he held Yun Shirshir's hand even more tightly and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yun Shirshir looked at Muyaja's increasingly cold face. She struggled slightly and wanted to break free from his grip. Gu Xingze held her tightly and turned his head. He said softly, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." His consolation did not calm her down at all. Undoubtedly, his protection would only anger Muyaja even more. She did not want to anger this man, let alone hurt the innocent. Lin Fengtian stood up with his hands on his shoulders and looked at the smoke-filled battle. He glanced at the angry Muyaja and saw that his muscles were tense. He suddenly understood. Could it be that Yun Shirshir was his woman? So, he banned Yun Shirshir from filming any kissing scenes in the set, and even from having intimate contact with anyone of the opposite sex? Was it because of his possessiveness towards this woman? Then, what was going on with Gu Xingze? Why was he at odds with Muyaja? What was he thinking? Lin Fengtian suddenly felt a headache coming on. The situation that had gone out of control was definitely not what he had expected. Let go of her. Muyaja gave an ultimatum. Obviously, his anger had reached its limit. This Gu Xingze, who did he think he was? How dare he fight with him? Yin Shirshir's body trembled from the immense fear she felt. Gu Xingze sensed her trembling fingertips and felt the cold temperature of her hand. He held it tightly and did not let go. Instead, he protected her behind him even more. Very good. Muyaja's lips curled into a bloodthirsty smile as he strode towards them. Lin Fengtian saw that things were about to get out of hand. He was afraid that things would get out of hand. He immediately gritted his teeth and tried to stop Muyaja. Muyaja did not even bother to look at him. In his fury, he kicked him to the side without even looking at him. Lin Fengtian hit the prop box and felt dizzy. Yin Shirshir's face instantly turned pale. Just as she was about to stop him, she saw Muyaja walk towards Gu Xingze. "Muyaja, don't!" Yin Shirshir screamed, but Gu Xingze quickly pushed her aside. She lost her balance and hit the wall. When she came back to her senses, she saw that Muyaja had already grabbed Gu Xingze's collar with a murderous look and was swinging a fist towards his face. As Gu Xingze was distracted, he was caught off guard and received a solid punch. His entire face was turned to the side, and a bloody gash appeared at the corner of his lips, for which a trickle of blood seeped out. Yin Shirshir was scared out of her wits. She wanted to go forward and stop him, but she was pulled aside by the field reporter behind her. "Shirshir, don't go over. It's too dangerous." The two men fought because they were angry and did not know how to control their strength. If he accidentally hurt her, her bones would probably be shattered with a single punch. Gu Xingze slowly straightened his body. He touched his lips with his long fingers, and the tip of his tongue tasted blood. There is no doubt that Muyaja's punch was not to be trifled with. Chapter 587. After receiving 10 years of special training, his punches and kicks did not have any special moves, but they contained a terrifying amount of power, and every move was fatal. However, Gu Xingze was not a simple character. Although he often played the role of a gentle and elegant person on the screen, he had the blood of the Gu family, the #1 mafia family in the capital, behind him. Naturally, he also had some skills. Gu Xingze looked up coldly, and his face was immediately covered with a layer of coldness. He unbuttoned his shirt with one hand, and at the speed of lightning, he raised his leg in the air and sent a powerful flying kick towards Muyaja's face. Muyaja dodged nimbly and grabbed the long leg that was flying towards him. However, he could not help but take a step back because of the huge impact. Gu Xingze took advantage of the momentum to move forward and hit him in the face with a powerful uppercut. Yin Shirshir was stunned, and she looked at the shocking scene with a conflicted expression. She had never seen such a terrifying scene before. The two men of similar strength were entangled in a fight. There weren't any fancy moves, but every punch was swift and fierce like lightning, and every move was fatal. The props at the scene were unfortunately destroyed during the fight, and they broke into pieces. Fast, too fast. Gu Xingze threw a punch, and Mu Yaja caught it steadily. His gaze sharpened, and he used his right hand like a knife and slashed at Gu Xingze's elbow. There was a groan, but Gu Xingze was not to be outdone. He opened his fist and drew his bow and began to counterattack. The two men were extremely fast, and they separated as soon as they met. The sound of fists and feet colliding was endless, and in the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged more than 10 moves. Fast as lightning. Everyone was stunned, and for a moment, they were all stunned on the spot. No one could see how the two men attacked and how they counterattacked. However, they could almost see Gu Xingze's expression becoming more and more powerless. Bang! Mu Yaja threw a flying kick at Gu Xingze's abdomen. Gu Xingze dodged nimbly and kicked the camera frame. The steel frame broke. The camera fell to the ground with a cracking sound. Yun Shishir watched with trepidation. She could not imagine that if Gu Xingze had not dodged that attack, his ribs would have been broken. Stop fighting. Gu Xingze, Mu Yaja, stop fighting. She rubbed her hair as if she was about to break down. She anxiously looked at the two people who were entangled together. She was so nervous that she was about to cry. Lin Fengtian and the others were already dumbfounded. Mu Yaja's punches and kicks were extremely fast and ruthless. In the blink of an eye, Gu Xingze seemed to be at a disadvantage. The scene caused everyone's heart to palpitate. At this moment, the huge music classroom was in a mess. There was no doubt in the slightest that in the end, both sides would suffer great losses. This was not what she wanted. This was definitely not what she wanted to see. She could not just stand by and watch, or else something would really happen. At this moment, Mu Yaja suddenly threw a roundhouse kick at Gu Xingze's abdomen, and the latter crashed heavily onto the blackboard. Just as Mu Yaja clenched his fist and swung it at Gu Xingze's nose. In a flash, Yin Shishir desperately rushed forward and threw herself in front of Gu Xingze. She hugged his shoulders tightly and screamed, "Stop fighting!" Her voice almost pierced the eardrums. Chapter 588. He gritted his teeth, but it was too late for him to retract his fist. Mu Yaja's strength shifted. His fist was close to Gu Xingze's ear as it landed heavily on the blackboard. Crack! A hole appeared on the blackboard. There was a moment of dead silence. Gu Xingze opened his eyes, and he was already covered in cold sweat. His gaze fell on Mu Yaja's fist. The wooden splinters on the blackboard had pierced his hand until it was a bloody mess. Yin Shishir, on the other hand, threw herself into his embrace and blocked his front with her eyes tightly shut. He grabbed her shoulders like a madman and roared, "Shishir, are you crazy?" Mu Yaja retracted his fist with a murderous look on his face. Drops of blood slid down from his fingertips and dripped onto the ground, dyeing it red. This was the scene that greeted his eyes. His heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a sharp sword. This woman had rushed forward without a care for her own safety and stood in front of another man. What was the meaning of this? It was blinding, really blinding. For a moment, Mu Yaja wanted nothing more than to kill Gu Xingze. He ignored the injury on his hand and pulled Yin Shishir out of Gu Xingze's arms, forcing her to turn around. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Woman, do you want to die?" The man's angry roar almost made her ears tremble. Mu Yaja's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at her. Was she going to block his punch for Gu Xingze? Did she not know that she was going to die? Yin Shishir opened her eyes and looked at the angry man in front of her in horror. He was hysterical, and his eyes seemed like they were about to spew out and swallow her whole. She was suddenly really afraid. She was afraid of this man from the bottom of her heart. "Stop fighting, okay?" Yin Shishir shouted at the top of her lungs to protect Gu Xingze. She immediately lowered her stance and said, "Don't hurt him anymore. Don't hurt him anymore." Mu Yaja clenched his fists tightly, the anger in his eyes almost burning her. Gu Xingze was not the one who was injured. He was also injured. Did she not see it? But why did she insist on protecting Gu Xingze? She only had eyes for other men. Mu Yaja was so jealous that he almost lost control. Seeing that she was shielding Gu Xingze with her hands, Muyaja warned, "Don't touch him." Yun Shishir froze and subconsciously retracted her hand. "Yun Shishir, I'm warning you. If you dare to lay a finger on him again, I'll make sure he dies a horrible death." His threat left no room for negotiation. There was no doubt that he would really kill Gu Xingze. Yun Shishir obediently stopped touching Gu Xingze. There was no doubt that if she touched Gu Xingze's finger, Muyaja would immediately break Gu Xingze's finger. "Don't be angry." Muyaja grabbed her chin, his eyes full of anger. "Don't be angry? Don't you think it's too late for you to say this now?" Gu Xingze straightened his arm in pain and said angrily, "Muyaja, I won't let you touch her. Get lost." Muyaja kicked his abdomen. Gu Xingze groaned in pain and fell to the ground weakly. Yin Shishir's heart skipped a beat, but she did not dare to utter another word. Muyaja pulled Yin Shishir into his arms and looked at Gu Xingze coldly. His thin lips twisted cruelly. "Gu Xingze, do you think you can compete with me? You're still too inexperienced." Chapter 589. Gu Xingze refused to submit to him and forced himself to stand up. Muyaja's eyes turned cold and he kicked him again, causing him to fall to the ground. "You want to kidnap my woman while I'm overseas? Gu Xingze, you're really something." Muyaja cruelly crushed his abdomen. His eyes were bloodthirsty and murderous. Gu Xingze sneered. "What right do you have to say that she's your woman? What right do I have?" Muyaja suddenly lowered his head and looked at Yun Shishir. He grabbed her chin and said in a charming and bewitching voice, "Tell him, whose woman are you?" Yun Shishir's red lips trembled. Her eyes fell on Muyaja's face in shock. She suddenly felt that this man was so unfamiliar that it was scary. Her every second of hesitation was undoubtedly angering him. "Tell him." He tightened his grip on her shoulders so hard that it hurt her. Gu Xingze looked at Yin Shishir, who was so frightened that she did not dare to move. His heart ached, and he shouted crazily, "Muyaja, you have no right to touch her. Let go. Let go of her. What right do you have to force her?" "Shut up." Muyaja grabbed his collar and sneered, "Right?" He leaned close to Gu Xingze's ear expressionlessly and said in a cold voice, "I'm her only man. Is this enough?" Gu Xingze's face turned pale instantly. "Shameless, you overestimate yourself." Muyaja suddenly let go of him. Yin Shishir looked at the blood at the corner of Gu Xingze's lips and the bruises on his arms. It was a shocking sight. She suddenly hugged Muyaja's waist tightly and said with trembling lips, I'm... Muyaja lowered his head and stared at her. Her consciousness suddenly dissipated, and her eyes lost focus as she collapsed. "I'm your woman. Isn't that enough? Is that enough? Don't be angry. I'll listen to you. Is that okay? If there's anything, just come at her. Don't hurt anyone else. It was all her fault. Don't hurt anyone anymore." She was scared. Gu Xingze stared at her pale face. He was so distressed that he could not speak. Sure. Enough. Don't say any more." She bit her lip and looked at him. "Please don't say any more," she cried out. "Don't beg him." Muyaja grabbed her wrist tightly. Yin Shishir gritted her teeth in pain, almost suffocating. Gu Xingze looked at her forbearing expression, but the pain in his body intensified. Muyaja pulled Yin Shishir into his arms and turned around to leave with her in his arms. Lin Fengtian looked at the man's back view as he left. His heart was in a mess for Yin Shishir. Just as he was about to go forward, he saw Gu Xingze struggling to stand up and catch up with them. He slapped his thigh and chased after them. At the entrance, rows of black cars were parked at the intersection. Yin Shishir's injuries were almost carried by him all the way to the sports car at the front. His steps were extremely fast, and his long legs were wide. She let him hug her pathetically and did not dare to struggle at all. She could clearly feel the anger that he was constantly suppressing. His eyes were bloodshot, and his handsome face was as tense as ice. This man was obviously very, very angry now. She did not even know what kind of fate awaited her next. "Muyaja." The man stopped in his tracks, but he did not turn around. He only turned his face slightly and looked at her coldly. Chapter 590. Muyaja turned around slowly. Gu Xingze stood at the door, but he did not come over. Fair competition? Mu Yaja smiled sinisterly. Gu Xingze looked at Yun Shir, who was in his arms but had given up struggling. His heart ached. If you're just toying with her, please let her go. I don't believe that you can protect her and not let her be bullied. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a cold smirk as he ignored him. He carried Yun Shir, who had lost all strength to struggle in his arms, to the sports car, opened the door to the front passenger seat, and pushed her in. Yun Shir slumped weakly in her seat with her head bowed low. She bit her lower lip so hard that it almost tore through. Mu Yaja fastened her seatbelt and returned to the driver's seat expressionlessly. He stepped on the accelerator, and the sports car roared as it sped away. Gu Xing's breathing quickened as he watched the car disappear into the distance. His body went limp, and he fell to his knees. How hateful! If he had not given up the position of the head of the Gu family, he would have had the ability to compete with him now. How could he lose to this man? Mu Yaja, damn it! Lin Fengtian, who had just arrived, was shocked. He immediately ordered, someone call a car. Xingze, are you okay? The convertible sports car sped along. Along the way, it ran more than 10 red lights and did not stop. The car sped out of the city and onto the winding mountain road in the suburbs. Mu Yaja stepped on the accelerator and held the steering wheel tightly. He drifted around the corner, and the car was going too fast. Yun Shir's breathing stiffened as she looked at the rapidly rising tachometer. Her heartbeat quickened. No matter how hard she tried to suppress it, she almost screamed when he accelerated around the corners. She could even see the sparks from the friction between the car and the fence from the rearview mirror. If there was even the slightest deviation, there was no doubt that the car would crash through the guardrail and fall down the mountain. The man was on the verge of losing control of his emotions. Mu Yaja, are you crazy? Her screams quickly drifted away in the wind. Shut up. Mu Yaja stared straight ahead, his entire being emitting a cold aura. That taut, handsome face, those deep and cold eyes, constantly reminded her just how angry he was at this moment. The wind was howling on a mountain road. Due to the speed of the car, the wind was so strong that it hurt her cheeks as if they were being cut by a knife. The wind kept flowing into her nose as if someone was ruthlessly choking her. It was almost suffocating. The speed of the car was so fast that the cliffs that flashed past outside the car were dazzling. Looking from afar, the neon lights of the mortal world were still thousands of miles away. The speed limit sign flashed in front of his eyes and was quickly left far behind. Below the guardrail was a cliff with no end in sight. If the car fell from here, it would definitely be smashed into smithereens. Is he crazy? Yin Shir turned her head and looked at him in panic. She was almost scared out of her wits by the terrifying speed of the car. 180 kilometers, 190 kilometers. Gosh, they were on a mountain road. The 30-speed limit sign kept reminding her of how dangerous the situation was. That's enough. Are you crazy? If this goes on, something will happen. Chapter 591. Mu Yaja did not even look at her as he looked straight ahead. At a bend, he suddenly turned the steering wheel and pulled the handbrake. The thick tires created a huge friction with the ground, causing smoke to rise. Due to the intense friction, the smell of burnt rubber filled her nostrils. Cough! Cough, cough! She looked at the rearview mirror and saw the whites of the eyes floating behind the car. Her heart trembled with fear as she thought that the car was going to catch fire. Stop, stop! Are you worried about me? Mu Yaja asked her persistently. He did not stop there. Instead, he stepped on the accelerator even more unscrupulously and increased the speed of the car by another gear. It was so fast that her ears were about to go deaf. Stop, I beg you. Yin Shir's body stiffened as she broke out in cold sweat. After a few drifts, her face was even paler than before. She clutched the seatbelt tightly and shut her eyes tightly. She did not dare to open them at all. Tell me, are you worried about me? Mu Yaja's face was tense as he forced her to answer him. The next drift made a loud and ear-piercing sound of friction. The car drove straight to the end of the cliff and was about to crash down the cliff. I'm worried about you. Enough. Stop. Yin Shirshir screamed at the top of her lungs. Muyaja stepped on the brakes expressionlessly. The car crashed into the fence and came to a stop in time with a sudden brake. The sports car swayed heavily. Yin Shirshir opened her eyes in fear, but all she saw was a mountain scenery in front of her. From the corner of her eyes, she saw that the car was almost lying at the end of the cliff. Half of the front of the car was almost hanging above the cliff. If she looked down, she would be in the air. If she had not braked in time, the sports car would have crashed into the fence and crashed down. What was this? Was he trying to scare her? Was he trying to scare her by speeding so crazily? Yin Shirshir covered her face with her pale white face. Her breathing was rapid, and she was on the verge of breaking down. Muyaja, I hate you. She covered her eyes with her hands and tried her best to suppress her emotions. She did not want to reveal her most vulnerable side to this man. Muyaja unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled her in front of him. He fiercely ordered, I order you to take back your words. Yin Shirshir's eyes widened in shock as she stared at him in disbelief. Sometimes this man's heartlessness was chilling. Yin Shirshir, I advise you not to try to anger me. Muyaja looked down at her terrified face and said coldly, Take back what you just said. All right, I'll take it back. Yin Shirshir's voice was hoarse as she sobbed. His cold gaze suddenly landed on her delicate pink lips, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. The kissing scene, just now, seemed to appear in front of his eyes. That scene was like a needle stabbing into his heart, causing him to be filled with rage that he had nowhere to vent. Yin Shirshir swallowed hard and carefully moved away. Muyaja, however, reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Lifting her chin with his hand, he stared coldly at her face as his slender fingers rubbed against her lips repeatedly. It seemed like he was using force to wipe away some marks on it. It was so strong that Yin Shirshir's lips turned pale. He kissed here. Yin Shirshir was stunned. Her pink lips trembled as she slowly nodded her head. He rubbed his fingertips hard, trying to wipe away any breath that Gu Xingze had left on her lips. It seemed like it wasn't thorough enough. Chapter 592. He suddenly lowered his head and covered her lips with his thin lips. His tongue traced the outline of her lips as he seriously and carefully licked her lips. Then, he bit down hard and pressed his lips against hers. Why? You seem to like him a lot? Yin Shirshir shook her head hurriedly. She had never had any thoughts about Gu Xingze. Muyaja sneered sinisterly and bit down hard on the corner of her lips. Yin Shirshir was in so much pain that she wanted to dodge backward, but he pressed her down with his arm and pressed her even closer to him. Then don't let him touch you. His lips were gloomy, and there was a strong sense of gloominess. Yin Shirshir's eyelashes fluttered, but she saw that the man's eyes were suddenly filled with coldness. Remember, you're my woman, so I don't like my woman being touched by anyone. Even if it's work, I won't allow it. Yin Shirshir's voice trembled as she said, I know, I won't do it again. There won't be a next time. He warned her again, but there was no room for negotiation. Muyaja turned around and suddenly reversed the car to a safe zone. The moment the car landed safely, Yin Shirshir's tensed heart seemed to have landed on the ground. When they returned to the flat ground, Yin Shirshir quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed open the door to get out of the car. Her legs gave way and she fell to the ground, clutching her chest. She had been speeding all the way, and it was as if her internal organs had been turned upside down. It was extremely uncomfortable. She patted her chest hard and felt like vomiting. However, when she reached her throat, she felt a surge of acid. At the same time that her heart ached, tears flowed out of her eyes. She was in an extremely sorry state. Muyaja slowly pushed open the door and got out of the car. He turned around and looked at her. Walk over. When Yin Shirshir heard the footsteps behind her, she jumped up from the ground in shock. She looked at him warily and kept retreating. The cold wind of the mountain range was extremely cold. Her beautiful hair fluttered in the wind. Muyaja stood in front of her. His tall figure was like a wallpaper, and his black shirt almost blended into the darkness of the night. The lights of the sports car were dazzling. Against the light, the moonlight cast a deep shadow on the man's deep silhouette. Only that pair of cold eyes looked at her through the messy hair on his forehead. Even though it was already June, the wind on the mountain was biting cold at night. However, no matter how bone-piercing it was, it could not compare to a 10,000th of his gaze. The winding mountain road was now closed, and no one was going up the mountain. This was the world that he ruled. Muyaja walked in front of her, bent down slightly, and reached out to grab her wrist. But because of the fear in her subconscious, the moment his cold fingertips touched her skin, Yin Shishir abruptly avoided his actions and waved his hand away. She slapped his hand aside. It was as if her submission to him was just a delaying tactic. Yin Shishir kept retreating. She looked at the man's handsome face that was gradually turning cold and gloomy. When she thought of his bad behavior and recalled the arrogant words that Mu Wanru had said to her, her heart was pierced fiercely. At the same time, she also had a deep hatred for him. Muyaja's face instantly turned cold. What? Don't touch me. Yin Shishir kept keeping a distance from him, but in her heart, she was determined to draw a line with this man from now on. As if he did not understand her words, Muyaja's lips stiffened and he closed in on her. Don't come over. Chapter 593. Muyaja's eyes flashed with malice, and his face turned extremely ugly. Say that again, he said, but it was a warning in disguise. He was warning her not to try to provoke him again. Yin Shishir slowly leaned her back against the guardrail. With a creaking sound, the guardrail made an ear-piercing sound of disrepair. She stared at Muyaja's every move with extreme vigilance and said coldly, I don't want you to touch me. I'm pregnant with Muyaja's flesh and blood. Previously, he had an ambiguous relationship with you because he thought that I couldn't give birth to a child for him and felt that you were different from other women. He was just toying with you. Now that I'm pregnant, do you think you can still shake my position? You still want to be promoted? It's undoubtedly a pipe dream. If he really has any feelings for you, then why didn't he break off the engagement with me? Why did he sleep with me while having an ambiguous relationship with you and make me pregnant with his flesh and blood? I'm a legal wife, and you're just a mistress that everyone wants to beat up. You can't see the light of day. Yin Shishir clenched her fists tightly, and her eyes were like dead ashes. Muyaja suddenly glared at her, his handsome eyes scarlet, and his voice was as cold as ice. You don't want me to touch you? Yin Shishir, I'll give you a chance. Take back those words and walk in front of me. Looking at her constantly retreating footsteps, his heart became more and more furious. If you don't want me to touch you, then who do you want to touch you? Gu Xingze? What does this have to do with Gu Xingze? Yin Shishir felt that he was a little unreasonable. You still dare to mention him? Muyaja heard her mention his name, and his anger was uncontrollable. He thought about how he had booked a plane ticket to fly back overnight and rushed to the set to see the two of them hugging and kissing. Even if he knew that it was just an act, he was still hopelessly jealous. Yin Shishir widened her eyes in disbelief. She felt that this man was really inexplicable. He was the one who implicated Gu Xingze first. Muyaja's eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth and said, If you keep talking about him, believe it or not, I will tear him apart and make him disappear. Yin Shishir said angrily, How dare you? Muyaja gloomily glared at her, seeing that she still dared to protect this man. His eyes were so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out. Do you think I wouldn't dare? The fury in his eyes frightened her. Yin Shishir looked at his bleeding fist. Just now, he had punched through the blackboard and was badly mutilated by the wooden thorns. However, at this moment, he seemed to be unaware of the pain from his wound and only stared at her coldly. He was like a wild beast looking for food, and his entire body was filled with the aura of a tiger eyeing its prey. She couldn't help but take a step back, but she heard a painful groan coming from the guardrail behind her. The guardrail on the mountain road had been attacked by heavy rain a while ago, and it had been exposed to the scorching sun for a long time. It had been in disrepair for a long time, and when she moved a little too far, she could hear the guardrail breaking from the depths. Yin Shishir was in a huge panic and didn't notice it. However, Muyaja sensed the danger behind her, and a trace of fear flashed in the depths of his handsome eyes. He shouted, Stupid woman, are you looking for death? Come here. Yin Shirshir was frightened by his angry voice, and her body trembled again. The gravel under her feet rolled down the mountain because of her actions. Crackle. Shit. Chapter 594. Yin Shirshir suddenly realized the danger she was in. She turned her eyes slightly and saw an endless cliff. The guardrail she was leaning on kept making cracking sounds as if it was on the verge of collapsing. Her heart skipped a beat at once. Humans were instinctively afraid of heights, and her legs couldn't help but feel weak. Muyaja stared at her movements, afraid that she would fall down the cliff with the broken guardrail if she was careless. At that moment, he felt a chill in his heart. He had been driving on a mountain road. No matter how fast the car was, he was confident in his driving skills. But now, he felt panic in his heart. It was a panic that he had never felt before. A chill ran down his spine. He stared at her nervously and reached out to her. "Come here. Don't move back anymore." If she fell, she would really be smashed to pieces. Yin Shirshir immediately said, "Don't come over. I won't go over unless you calm down first." Muyaja stared at her and said in a cold voice, "Stupid woman, are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you. Look at you now. I'm afraid I'll be crushed by you before I fall off the cliff." Muyaja gritted his teeth and said, "If I could, I'd crush you right now." Yin Shirshir trembled and sneered. "Then I'd rather jump down and be crushed to death by you." "You dare?" Muyaja roared. Yin Shirshir bit her lips. "Do you think I don't dare?" Muyaja clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles creaked eerily. It was as if he was trying to restrain himself. "All right, I'll calm down," even if he knew that this woman was threatening him. Yin Shirshir looked at the redness in his eyes and suddenly bit her lips. In the end, she forced herself to calm down and said calmly, "Muyaja, promise me something." "What's the condition?" Muyaja asked, but his eyes were fixed on her feet. He was prepared for the moment she was in danger of falling off the cliff and was silently calculating the distance between him and her. "Let's not be in contact anymore." Yin Shirshir gritted her teeth and tried to suppress the sourness and pain in her heart. "Let me go. Let you go." Muyaja held his breath, and then his eyes turned cold. "What do you mean?" "You give me freedom, and I'll give you freedom. We won't interfere with each other. Isn't that good?" Yin Shirshir smiled bitterly. "Let me go." His possessiveness, dominance were almost suffocating, and he could not give her a sense of security. Perhaps relationships were tiring to begin with. She didn't want to bear it anymore. Muyaja stared at her without blinking. "Reason? There's no reason. I just hate you." Yin Shirshir said calmly. "I hate your dominance. I hate your arrogance. And I hate your self-assertion even more. My life has never been peaceful since I met you. Isn't that reason enough?" Muyaja stared at her. The emotions in his eyes changed rapidly, but they were unfathomable. Suddenly, 3 words were forced out from between his lips. "I agree." Chapter 595. Yin Shirshir slowly straightened her body and walked towards Muyaja. However, when she was halfway there, she saw Muyaja suddenly rushing towards her. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace. It was a terrifying force. Yin Shirshir could see the uncharacteristic panic on his tense and handsome face. Was he worried about her? Was he afraid that she would really fall off the cliff? There was no time for her to react. Under the huge inertia, the two of them fell onto the hood of the sports car. Yin Shirshir groaned in pain. When she opened her eyes, Muyaja flipped her over and pinned her under his body. His tall figure almost blocked out the moonlight. A handsome face that was filled with anger, and anger came into view. Now that she had fallen into his hands again, the anger that he had been suppressing suddenly exploded without restraint. Muyaja angrily grabbed her chin and buried his face in her neck. He bit her and wanted to sink his teeth into her bones. Numbness and pain spread throughout her limbs. Yin Shirshir frowned, but she heard Muyaja's deep and cold voice. "Don't interfere with each other?" "Yin Shirshir, who gave you the right to make your own decisions? Let me tell you, this is impossible." She was stunned. Muyaja looked up and held the back of her neck with one hand, forcing her to look at his face. "Listen to me clearly. It's your business whether you want me or not. It's my business whether I want you or not. You have no right to interfere. You. Yin Shishir was so angry that she was at a loss for words. I want you for sure. Muyaja glared at her. Don't tell me that you and I belong in two different worlds. Yin Shishir, listen carefully. I, Muyaja, am your world. Do you understand? She wanted him to let her off. Not in this lifetime. At this moment, the vicious aura on his body was extraordinary. His fingers that were pinching her chin were filled with strength, as if he wanted to ruthlessly crush her bones. Not allowing her to escape, he stared into her eyes. Now, it's your turn to answer my question. Muyaja asked coldly. Where else did he touch you? Yin Shishir was stunned. What? His gaze fell on her lips, and his fingertips rubbed against them repeatedly. Other than here, where else did he touch you? Speak. Yin Shishir suddenly realized that he was asking her where else Gu Xingzi had touched her. You won't let me touch you, but you let him touch you? What was he saying? Yin Shishir flew into a rage out of humiliation. He didn't touch me. I saw it all. You're lying? Muyaja looked at her lips that were as red as blood because of his ravaging, and his eyes were filled with anger. He touched you here. That's work, okay? Don't use work as an excuse. Speak. Where else did he touch you? Muyaja lifted a strand of her hair, and a fragrant scent wafted over. He questioned, Did he touch you here? Yin Shishir shook her head, and her eyes were filled with shock. She was frightened by the man's almost paranoid possessiveness. What about here? His fingertips caressed her soft waist. Yin Shishir still shook her head. Muyaja, that's enough. Not enough. Muyaja reached his hand under her skirt, searching for her whereabouts. His cold fingertips and his touch made her shudder. Yin Shishir, do you know? Chapter 596. Needless to say, Muyaja had always been arrogant and would not tolerate any trespass on his territory. There was no doubt that he, too, regarded her as his territory's property. Hence, he gave Lin Fengtian an ultimatum. He forbade Yin Shishir from touching any member of the opposite sex in the production team, even if it was necessary for work. He was serious. He was not joking. Previously, when he flew straight to London for the acquisition project and left the country for half a month, he did think of bringing her with him. However, he knew that with Yin Shishir's character, she would not leave Yu behind to follow him overseas. He did not say anything, either. He had always respected her to the greatest extent. During the 10-odd days abroad, other than being busy with the acquisition project, he had been thinking about her all the time. He missed her crazily. It was as if he had gone mad. He had always been as arrogant as a king, never allowing himself to lower his head or compromise with anyone. He also did not allow himself to be restrained in any way. Alas, he seemed to have lost. He was actually crazy about a woman? It was unbelievable. He even had a trace of suspicion. Could it be that this woman had cast some kind of bewitching spell on him? Otherwise, why would he only want her? In the past, he did not care about marriage at all. Marriage was a grave? He did not think so. Marriage, to him, was not essential. It was just a way to tie up benefits in the Vanity Fair. For a wealthy family like the Mu family, it was beneath him to tie them down with marriage. However, his marriage was not up to him to decide. He would marry whoever Mu Sheng liked. It didn't matter who his wife was. The marriage contract didn't mean anything to him at all. She seemed to want a family, though. During the few days in London, he seriously considered it. Since she liked him, she wanted a stable family. Did she not always want a family? Then he would give her a family, so that she would not be homeless and have no one to rely on. He did not care whether she liked him or not. He did not care whether she wanted him or not. He wanted to add Muyaja's name to her life, stroke by stroke. He had always been an extremely stubborn man. He was in the past, and even more so now. Either he did not want her, or he did not care. Or he wanted her forever. The woman that he'd set his mind on, no one, no matter what, could erase this person from his obsession. What did she do, though? She blacklisted his number. He thought that something had happened to her, so he rushed back to the country anxiously. When he entered the set, he saw this scene. He saw this woman holding another man and kissing him with a gentleness he had never seen before. From his angle, he could see the love and unconcealable love on her face. At that moment, his anger began to build up. Even if this was just an act, he was so jealous that he wanted nothing more than to tear Gu Xingze to shreds. But this woman defended him again and again. She even disregarded the danger and stood in front of this man. What about him? Indifference, rejection, resistance, and even hysterically told him not to touch her. Very well, very well. Muyaja stared intently at her face, his eyes flashing with coldness. Yun Shishir stared at him in shock. Her back was pressed against the hot hood of the car. The scorching sensation was similar to Muyaja's anger at this moment. Chapter 597. When they returned to the villa, Muyaja carried Yun Shishir up expressionlessly. She struggled in his arms, but she couldn't resist at all. His arms were so strong and steady. Just the fact that he could smash through a blackboard with a single punch was enough to prove his strength. She raised her head, but could only see his proud jawline, which was tense and frozen. Along the way, the servants kept avoiding them in fear. They had always been good at reading people's expressions. Young Master didn't look good. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to avoid him in time and would be implicated. Muyaja carried her into the bathroom in the master bedroom and placed her in the bathtub. Yun Shishir's body was quickly submerged in the warm water. The bathtub was huge. It was 1 meter deep, 3 meters wide, and 5 meters long. Its capacity was shockingly large. Her body had just been thrown into the water, and the water quickly covered her head. Her body quickly sank into the water droplets. The warm water suddenly flowed into her nose, lips, and teeth. Yun Shishir was caught off guard and choked on a mouthful of water. When she struggled to surface, Muyaja stood in front of the bathtub and sized her up expressionlessly. She was still wearing the set's clothes. She was wearing a middle school student uniform with a white shirt and an aqua blue pleated skirt. Her clothes were wet from the water and clung tightly to her body, ironing the curves of her exquisite body. Her white shirt was soaked in water, and her underwear could be vaguely seen. Her beautiful body was exposed to the air, but at this moment, she looked a little disheveled. Yun Shishir stood there helplessly. Her face was half angry and half aggrieved. Her misty eyes glared at him angrily. Muyaja's heart ached a little. He couldn't help but want to pull her into his arms. His handsome eyes swept over her, landing on her 2 jade-like collarbones, her bright white skin, and her pair of jade-like legs. His eyes heated up, but when he thought of that dazzling scene, when he thought of her lips, wrists, and body that Gu Xingze had touched, the thought of her being tainted by another man, he couldn't control his anger, and his sharp gaze was like a sword that wanted to pierce through her body. He then said, "Wash it clean. Wash away all the places where that man touched you." With that, he slammed the door and left. Yun Shishir stared blankly at his back as he slammed the door and left. Bang! The violent slamming of the door seemed to shake the entire bathroom. His icy cold gaze just now had undoubtedly pierced her. Did he think she was dirty? Was he complaining that she had been touched by someone else? But nothing had happened between her and Gu Xingze. He asked her to wash herself clean, but what about him? Could he clean every inch of his body that Mu Wanru had touched? Since he wanted her to be clean, fine, then she would do as he wished. Muyaja walked to the bar counter and opened a bottle of Lafite. He took a sip of the fragrant wine. He forced himself not to think about it, but he still couldn't control his emotions. Bang! He smashed the wine glass on the floor. It was as if he could only vent his anger by doing so. But it didn't seem to be enough to vent his anger. He waved his hand and swept a row of classic red wine on the table onto the floor, making a mess. Immediately, a servant came forward in fear and cleaned up the wreckage on the floor. Muyaja sat on the sofa for a full hour, but he didn't see her come out of the bathroom. Chapter 598. The moment he opened the door, he saw Yun Shishir completely submerged in the bathtub. The bathtub was filled with foam, and her body was wrapped in a thick layer of foam. He felt as though a huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. However, he immediately clenched his jaw and walked over with a heavy expression. "Have you washed yourself clean?" Yun Shishir only cared about lowering her head and scrubbing her body vigorously. Her face was numb, and he didn't know how long she had been scrubbing like this. She used all her strength every time she scrubbed, as though she couldn't wait to scrape off a layer of skin. She acted as though she hadn't heard his question, as though she hadn't heard him at all. This woman was clearly angry with him. Her heart was clearly cold to him. Muyaja bent over with a gloomy expression and brushed away the layer of foam. However, his gaze turned cold. He saw that under the foam, her originally fair and flawless skin was now filled with a glaring dark red. However, it was as if she didn't feel any pain as she continued to scrub. Some of the especially tender areas actually started to bleed under her vigorous scrubbing. Damn it! What was she doing? Why was she scrubbing so hard? Didn't she feel pain? Her skin was so damn tender. Usually, he would be able to leave a red mark with just a gentle pinch, and it wouldn't dissipate for a long time. Even he couldn't bear to ravage her skin like this. What was she doing? Abusing herself? Using this as an excuse to provoke him? Taking revenge on him? Muyaja's heart ached. His heart ached so much that he wanted to snatch the bath towel from her hand. He was furious. Are you crazy? However, Yin Shirshir suddenly dodged. Then, she turned to look at him with a cold expression. Her lips curled into a cold arc. What did I do wrong again? Muyaja furrowed his brows. However, he saw her fling the bath towel covered in foam onto him. The flying foam splattered onto his tense and gloomy face. Yin Shirshir glared at him with bloodshot eyes. Didn't you want me to wash myself clean? What did I do wrong? I know you think I'm dirty. You're washing, but I'm washing as hard as I can. You figured out. Muyaja grabbed her wrist and scolded. I didn't let you abuse yourself like this. Yin Shirshir smiled eerily. I'm not abusing myself. It's just that if I don't wash myself like this, how can I wash myself clean? Her words are getting more and more infuriating. He warned her not to try to provoke her. But what about him? Wasn't every word he said trying to infuriate her, stab her, humiliate her? She despised every part of him that Mu Wanru had touched. Would he wash it clean? Yin Shirshir rubbed more body wash. The bottle of body wash, which was originally full, was now empty. Since he wanted her to wash herself clean, she naturally had to make herself clean. Muyaja frowned and was filled with anger by her. At the moment, he had to endure it and picked up the bath towel to wipe her body. However, Yin Shirshir pushed him away fiercely. Don't touch me. Muyaja's face darkened. However, he saw her glaring at him fiercely. Every inch of his body was filled with disgust. Don't touch me. You despise me for being touched and dirty. I despise you for being touched and dirty by other women. Yin Shirshir snatched the bath towel from his hand and sneered coldly. Please wash your body clean before touching me. You're a germaphobe, but I'm one too. What do you mean by that? Muyaja's face was filled with anger. Chapter 599. She didn't give him a good look either as she returned the favor. Muyaja's face turned cold. He stretched out his long arm and turned her shoulders over. Speak. What do you mean by what you said just now? I don't mean anything else. I just think you're dirty. Yin Shirshir glared at him and said coldly, I'm not done yet. Please get out. You're not going to speak? Yin Shirshir continued to scrub her body, treating his words as air. The man lost his patience in the end. He pulled her into his arms and drained all the foam in the sink. He turned on the shower and started to scrub her body. Yin Shirshir pushed him, and water splashed all over him as she struggled. Muyaja wouldn't allow her to mess around, so he pressed her heavily into the bathtub and clamped her wrists tightly with one arm. In this way, she completely lost the ability to resist. The water quickly filled up, and he changed the tub of warm water again. Muyaja patiently helped her wipe her body. Yin Shirshir couldn't break free from him, so she gave up struggling and let him wipe all the foam off her body. He lowered his head and saw her stubborn face. On her fair face, her eyes were misty and her red lips were pursed into a line. Even when he was wiping her, he didn't know what to do and hurt her, but even so, she didn't make a sound. She was as stubborn as an injured little beast. It was as if she was suppressing herself and isolating herself from the world. However, she didn't think about who was the one overturning the world at this moment. He was displeased by her indifference. Muyaja pinched her chin and asked her, Are you angry? Yin Shirshir pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She ignored him and ignored him. No matter how many times he repeated himself, she turned a blind eye and treated him as air. She ignored him? Muyaja sneered. He wanted to see how long she could stand it. Yin Shirshir closed her eyes tightly, but she suddenly felt a strange sensation coming from a certain part of her body. She was shocked, and her body shivered. However, he didn't allow her to escape and easily held her in his arms. Yin Shirshir glared at him angrily, her eyes red. Muyaja pressed her under his body. Just one arm pressed on her shoulder, and it was as if she was nailed. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great, and she couldn't fight him at all. She stared straight at him, watching as he took off his shirt with one hand and pressed his body down heavily. His thin lips sealed her tightly pursed lips. No matter how she tried to dodge, he had the ability to subdue her. The shower head was still spraying water. They let the warm water submerge their bodies. Muyaja pressed his lips against hers, unscrupulously and fiercely taking her. At first, she tried her best to endure and bite the root. Even if he was ruthless, she didn't make a sound. But Muyaja clearly wanted to torture her. She couldn't suppress the surging emotions in her body anymore. She couldn't help but moan and sink in it. Muyaja, she called out his name and made her last weak resistance. She reached out to push his shoulder, but he grabbed her hand. He looked down and sucked on her jade-like white fingertips. Gradually, his movements were no longer rash and gradually became gentle. Chapter 600. He carried her out of the bathroom. In the huge bedroom, he dominated the world. They spent the whole night together. He didn't remember how long it had been since he last touched her. He missed her so much that his body had been suppressed. In a daze, Yin Shirshir couldn't remember how many times he had done it with her. However, his domineering nature was once again evident in matters of the heart. He kissed her eyebrows, her lips, and her collarbone. "This is mine." Then he kissed her shoulder blade, fingertips, and waist. "This is mine." He took her fiercely. Muyaja wanted her fiercely. "This can only belong to me." It was as if he wanted to carve his name, his breath, and his brand on her body. "Yin Shirshir, every inch of your body is mine." Yin Shirshir suddenly cried and complained uncontrollably. "What about you? Do you belong to me?" Muyaja paused in his actions as he looked at the woman who had suddenly burst into tears. "Do you belong to me here?" She touched his lips. "Do you belong to me here too?" She stroked his chest. "Did you say these words to Mu Wanru? Did you kiss her lips and want her like you want me? If I'm yours, what about Mu Wanru?" He was jealous. How could she not be jealous? He was mad with jealousy. How could she not be mad with jealousy? They were not equal. How could he ask her to belong to him completely? At dawn, Muyaja went into the bathroom to take a shower. Wearing a bathrobe, he walked slowly to the window and lit a cigarette expressionlessly. With the sound of the lighter, the mellow smell of burning tobacco filled the room. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. A wisp of pure and thick smoke dispersed from between his lips. Through the reflection of the window, the person on the bed was curled up helplessly in a deep sleep. He walked to the bed and sat on the edge. He lowered his head to look at her sleeping face. Even in deep sleep, her delicate eyebrows were still tightly knitted. Her black hair was scattered around the pillow, contrasting with her fair skin. She was inconceivably beautiful. He had done it a few times. Perhaps it was too hard, so her face was full of exhaustion. Muyaja reached out and lifted a strand of her hair. He lowered his eyes and sniffed the fragrance of her hair. Taking a deep breath, his handsome eyes suddenly opened slightly. Her words rang in his ears. "You want me to belong to you. Do you belong to me too? If I'm yours, what about Mu Wanru? Does she belong to you too? Do you belong to her too?" With his keen intuition, he guessed that something must have happened during this period of time. Mu Wanru? Did Mu Wanru tell her something? It was just a guess. Before she left the country, he had specially assigned a group of bodyguards to protect her no matter where she went. According to the report, she had been filming for the past few days and had not had much contact with anyone else. When Yin Shirshir woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. The curtains were tightly drawn, and the thick darkness in the bedroom was almost suffocating. There was no one beside the bed. Holding her groggy head, she sat up on the bed and lifted the blanket. She had unknowingly changed into a bathrobe, and her body had been meticulously cleaned. Chapter 601. Yin Shishir heaved a sigh of relief. She struggled to move her body, only to realize that her thighs were sore and swollen. Why did it hurt so much? Memories of their passionate night came back to her, and her face turned red all the way to her ears. She frowned and tried to move her thighs. She lifted the blanket and got off the bed. Only then did she realize what it was, and her legs went weak. Her whole body felt like it was falling apart, and she could barely stand. She held onto the bedside table and took deep breaths to calm her heartbeat. She then walked into the bathroom to wash up. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of the red hickeys on the back of her neck in the mirror. She lifted the collar of her bathrobe and saw that her collarbone and body were covered in crisscrossing hickeys. It was a ghastly sight. This man was extraordinarily domineering in bed. After Yin Shishir got dressed and washed up, she opened the bedroom door. Outside the door, a row of servants stood respectfully and reverently, their expressions respectful. "Miss Yin, good morning." Their simultaneous greetings gave her a fright. Yin Shishir was stunned for a moment. She looked around and saw a row of uniformed servants standing by the door with respectful and courteous smiles on their faces. "You all." Yin Shishir put her hands behind her back uneasily. She subconsciously clutched her collar in an attempt to cover up the hickeys he had left on her body. "Young master has gone out. Lunch is ready for you." Sitting at the dining table, Yin Shishir looked at the sumptuous spread on the table. Even though it looked, smelled, and tasted good, she was not in the mood to taste it. It was as if she was chewing on wax. The Mu family. Mu Yaja had just entered the house when he saw Mu Sheng sitting on a chair with a cane. Mu Wanru was standing beside him, gently massaging his shoulders. Seeing him return, Mu Sheng's face darkened instantly. His face was ashen, and his gaze, as sharp as an eagle's, landed on him. It was frightening. Mu Yaja curled his lips. "Grandpa." Mu Sheng was inexplicably furious. He slammed his cane on the table, and a violent aura rushed toward him. "Do you still see me as your grandfather?" Mu Yaja stood at the door and glanced at Mu Wanru from the corner of his eyes. The latter shrunk her shoulders when she saw his fierce gaze, and a timid fear appeared on her face. Mu Sheng was furious. Suppressing his anger, he asked, "I heard that you returned to the country yesterday, but you didn't come home. Where did you go last night?" Mu Yaja's gaze fell on his grandfather, his face calm and composed. "Grandpa, I came home to announce something. Answer my question first." Mu Sheng's anger had yet to subside, so he was not in the mood to listen to him. He threw a magazine at him. Mu Yaja did not reach out to catch it. The magazine fell to the ground with the cover facing up. It was a photo taken by the media at Huan Yu's annual cocktail party. In the photo, Yin Shishir was dressed in splendid attire. She looked back and smiled. It was just the side of her face, but it was stunning. "Who is this woman?" Mu Yaja glanced at her coldly before retracting his gaze and keeping quiet. Mu Wanru immediately bent over to persuade him. "Grandpa, calm down. She's just a small-time celebrity in the entertainment industry. Why are you angry over this?" Chapter 602. Such a woman can forget about stepping into the Mu family. "Grandpa, don't make things difficult for him. Anyway, his heart has never been on me. I'm already used to it." Mu Wanru pretended to be aggrieved. She pretended to speak up for her grandpa, but she was secretly pleased with herself. With Mu Sheng backing her, what was Yin Shishir to her? Even if Mu Yaja wanted to marry Yin Shishir, with Mu Sheng stopping him, it was impossible for him to step into the Mu family. Her heart toward Mu Yaja was completely dead. This man's heart, from the beginning to the end, had never been with her. This man never had her in his eyes. Even when he got engaged to her 6 years ago, it was only because of Mu Sheng that he was reluctant to do so. The wedding was postponed again and again because he treated her as nothing. He had never touched her before. If a man did not even touch a woman, it could only mean that she meant nothing to him. It was not that she had not tried and tried her best, but even when she stripped naked in front of him, this man did not even look at her. His eyes were even filled with disgust. She had the title of the Mu family's young madam, but it was only in name. Right now, though, The most important thing for her was to establish her status as young Madame Mu and get married to Muyaja as soon as possible. Besides that, so what if Muyaja did not love her? With wealth and glory, she did not care if she could not win Muyaja's heart. This was the sad part of a rich family's marriage. Thinking of this, she felt relieved. Muxing did not know what Mu Wanru was thinking. He only saw the lonely and sad expression on her face. His heart ached for her tolerance and compromise. He felt even more indignant for her. He turned to glare at Muyaja, his face flushed red with anger. Yaja, look at how Wanru treats you and how you treat her. Grandpa doesn't care if you're just toying with that woman or not. As an experienced person, Grandpa can tell you that none of the actresses in the entertainment industry are good. They look pure on the surface, but deep down, they're lewd and despicable. I don't care about anything. Anyway, Wanru's status as the legal wife is right here, and no one can replace her. Muyaja sneered and curled his lips. Legal wife? Musheng did not notice the playfulness and mockery that flashed past his eyes. His anger dissipated a little under Mu Wanru's consolation. Calmly, he said, "If you like any woman, even if you want to marry her as your second wife, Grandpa won't have any objections as long as the girl's family background is clean." But which woman in the entertainment industry didn't want to climb up the social ladder? Even if she marries into the Mu family as a concubine, I will never allow it. Climb the social ladder? Yun Shishir needed to be rich? Muyaja even suspected that if he let Yun Shishir marry into the Mu family, her precious son might not even care about the Mu family. A 7-year-old child controlled the world's #1 toy empire. Just as he said, this child was not as simple as he thought. You might not even care about the Mu family. Yun Tianyo's arrogant words still rang in his ears. Muyaja, let me tell you, Mommy is a treasure in my heart. If you want to know on my mommy, you must do so legitimately. Chapter 603. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, wanted a family. Then, he would give him a family. A family of 4 with him, her, and 2 children. His son was more outstanding than him. At a young age, he already had a net worth of hundreds of millions. The Mu family was nothing to him. Muyaja's thin lips parted slightly, and his words were as cold as ice. Grandpa, I think you're mistaken about something. Hearing him speak, the old man was baffled. His eagle-like eyes narrowed as a strange feeling arose in his heart. What do you mean? What did I get wrong? This woman will be my wife, the future young mistress of the Mu family, and the woman I've set my mind on. What? Hearing this, the old man was instantly enraged, but more than that, he was in disbelief. He had watched him grow up, so he knew him better than anyone else. Muyaja had been an outstanding child from a young age due to his strict etiquette. He was different from those second-generation heirs from other wealthy families who were ignorant and incompetent. They spent their days indulging in debauchery, seeking pleasure, and having countless women by their side. Muyaja was almost cold and indifferent toward women. He had once thought that his precious grandson was just playing around with this woman on a whim. That was all. When he got sick of her one day, he would settle down. Who would have thought that he would actually tell him that he was serious about this? He was serious about marrying that woman, and even said something as unreasonable as the woman I've set my mind on. If this woman was a well-bred young lady of the same social status as the Mu family, it would be fine. His grandfather would also approve of her. However, this woman was an actress in the entertainment industry. Such a woman had no right to step through the Mu family's doors. A ruthless look surfaced on the old man's face. He glared coldly at Muyaja and bellowed, "How dare you? Are you ignoring Grandpa's words? Didn't I tell you before that such a woman can forget about stepping through the Mu family's doors? Did you not take Grandpa's words to heart?" Mu Wanru was the first to interrupt him. "Grandpa, don't be angry. You know it too. Which woman in the entertainment industry wasn't good at scheming?" He was very shrewd. Some women were born to be good at seducing men. She was the reincarnation of a vixen. At most, Aja was just on a whim. Even if he wants to marry that woman and make her his concubine, I will agree. Mu Sheng retorted angrily. Agree to what? Wanru, it's not that Grandpa wants to scold you, but why are you so heartless? If such a woman marries into the Mu family, It's obvious that she's here to compete with you. You've always been pure and innocent. Do you want Grandpa to watch you scheme against another woman? You don't care about yourself, but Grandpa cares about you. Mu Wanru smiled shyly and mumbled, but Aja likes that woman, doesn't he? There was nothing he could do about it. I also hope that he can dote on me more, but feelings can't be forced. Mu Yaja's handsome eyes narrowed as his gaze landed on Mu Wanru. She was born with an extremely pleasing mouth. Her words were sweeter than honey and could coax the old man into submission. It was no wonder that he doted on her so much, to the point of doting on her to the bone. She usually put in a lot of effort into him. Chapter 604. Just like the other old people, he lacked companionship and protection. He was usually busy with work and rarely came home to accompany him. For some reason, Xiaoyi-Chin was not close to the old man. Hence, the person who spent the most time with him was Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru had spent a lot of effort on him. He arranged for her to be the HR director of Dishing Group and a core member of the board directors. She could be said to be second only to one person in the Mu group. Even if she was busy with work, she would end her work early and rush back to accompany him. It could be said that he was very dependent on Mu Wanru. Perhaps it was because he missed Mu Wanru so much that he was sick, but he was almost morbidly attached to her. His health was deteriorating day by day, and he had to take a lot of medicine every day. As he got older and was troubled by his illness, his temper flared up. When his illness acted up, he would be unusually irritable, and no one could persuade him. Only when Mu Wanru was by his side, coaxing and lying, would the old man be willing to take the medicine. Mu Wanru's soft and coquettish words were very effective on Grandpa Mu. It was obvious that he was completely under her control. Mu Yaja's eyes darkened, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Hence, when he heard Mu Wanru's pretense of generosity and grievance, he was even more furious. He slammed the table and bellowed, "What do you mean by like? Does this chap know what like is? Is marriage based on like enough? Wanru, don't worry. Even if this chap insists on bringing that woman into the Mu family, as long as Grandpa is around, I won't sit back and do nothing. Grandpa is on your side. I'll definitely stand up for you." Mu Wanru's watery eyes were smiling, but she was helpless. "Grandpa, sigh. Grandpa, I have something to announce to you when I'm back." "What's the matter?" Mu Sheng grumpily asked. Mu Yaja slowly walked to the sofa and sat down. His body sank slightly into the sofa, and his posture was as leisurely and arrogant as an overlord. His slender legs were elegantly crossed. His handsome eyes were slightly opened, and cold words escaped from his lips. "I want to break off the engagement with Wanru." "What?" Mu Sheng's face drained of color when he heard that. He slammed the table and stood up in disbelief. "What did you just say?" "I said it very clearly just now. I want to break off the engagement with her." Mu Yaja seemed to turn a blind eye to his anger and calmly repeated, "I won't allow it." Mu Sheng blurted out without a second thought. The fury on his face was on the verge of eruption. "I don't know what's wrong with you, but you actually want to cancel the engagement. I think you're a bastard." Mu Yaja sneered. "Grandfather, since you like her so much, why don't you take her as your concubine?" Hearing that, the old man flew into a rage and nearly had a stroke. "Shut up. That's ridiculous." Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. In the past, he would have stopped talking at this point. He had never once disobeyed his grandfather's words. However, it was different today. Mu Yaja retorted, "Grandpa, you're forcing me to marry a woman I don't like. That's ridiculous." Chapter 605. This brat had clearly grown up and was no longer putting him, his grandfather, in his eyes. He actually dared to say that he wanted to annul the engagement. Mu Sheng supported himself on the table as he glared at him furiously. This engagement was set by him, and no one was allowed to annul it. Even his most beloved grandson was not allowed to do so. Mu Yaja raised his eyes and met his grandfather's expressionless gaze. Seeing how protective he was of Mu Wanru, and how furious he was at the mention of annulling the engagement, he was even more certain that Grandpa Mu's feelings for Mu Wanru were not purely the concern of an elder toward Junior. Instead, it was an obsession that was almost twisted and sick. Mu Qingcheng, that woman whom Grandpa Mu had been longing for all this while. Grandpa Mu was obsessed with his daughter. Not only did he keep the jade pendant that Mu Qingsheng had left with him, but his bedside was also filled with photos of Mu Qingsheng when she was young. Grandpa Mu's longing for his beloved daughter was enough to see. Mu Yaja did not know what kind of woman Mu Qingsheng was. His father, and even Grandpa Mu, were obsessed with her. It was rumored that Mu Yinqing, who was Mu Yaja's father, also had feelings for Mu Qingsheng. As for Mu Qingsheng, the capital's #1 singer, he had once pursued her passionately. Alas, Mu Sheng cut off all his thoughts about Mu Qingsheng. At that time, Mu Yinqing already had a marriage alliance with the capital's Jiang family's daughter. This marriage alliance was of utmost importance to the Mu group. More importantly, Mu Sheng was very conservative and had a strong prejudice against singers. Naturally, he did not agree to Mu Yinqing marrying this woman. Mu Yinqing had no choice but to compromise. He proposed a condition, which was for Mu Sheng to acknowledge Mu Qingsheng as his adopted daughter. Mu Sheng agreed to it immediately. Mu Qingsheng became the Mu family's adopted daughter as a matter of course. At that time, many wealthy families in the capital coveted Mu Qingsheng. Her beauty and talent were undeniable. Initially, Mu Sheng did not like Mu Qingsheng and did not give her any face. But Mu Qingsheng remembered the Mu family's kindness to her. She was grateful to the Mu family. Hence, she served him well in all matters, big or small. Gradually, he developed feelings for her other than kinship. He had fallen in love with this pretty girl from the bottom of his heart. He loved Mu Qingsheng to the bone, and a perverted possessiveness grew in his heart. Whenever Mu Qingsheng got too close to any man, he would fly into a rage and fly into a rage. Later on, Mu Sheng wanted to take Mu Qingsheng in as his fourth wife. This decision caused the entire Mu family to be shocked. It also scared Mu Qingsheng. She only had filial piety for him and nothing else. Alas, he wished for her to stay by his side and serve him forever. Mu Yinqing was the first to object, and the relationship between the father and son became strained. In the end, they became enemies. Just then, Mu Qingsheng stood up and told him that she already had a man in her heart. The two of them were in love, and she was already pregnant with a child at that time. Hearing this, Mu Sheng flew into a rage and ordered her to abort the child. She refused to comply and left the Mu family that very night, disappearing without a trace. Chapter 606. In fact, that was not the case. The truth he found out was that, in order to find Mu Qingsheng, Mu Sheng did not hesitate to turn the capital upside down. He sent a large number of men and even mobilized the military to track down Mu Wanru's whereabouts. He ordered, Mu Qingsheng wants to see a living person. Leave no children alive. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots. The Mu family was determined not to leave any bastard alive. Mu Qingsheng was unfortunately involved in a car accident to avoid the pursuit of the men sent by Mu Sheng. Her car flipped off a cliff, and she died. A beautiful woman died an untimely death. Her two children, on the other hand, disappeared without a trace. No one knew if they were alive, and no one knew if they were dead or alive. When he learned of Mu Qingsheng's death, Mu Sheng was heartbroken. The pain of losing his beloved daughter was so excruciating that he fell ill. For 5 whole years, he was bedridden, absent-minded, and depressed. It was only when he recovered from his illness that he thought that since Mu Wanru was no longer around, he should at least find his 2 children. 15 years ago, due to a freak combination of factors, Mu Wanru was brought back to the Mu family by Mu Sheng. He truly doted on her, just like how he doted on Mu Wanru back then. However, this doting was not so pure. When they were young, Mu Yaja happened to pass by the living room and saw Mu Wanru taking an afternoon nap on the sofa. Mu Sheng sat by the sofa and watched her quietly. From time to time, he would brush away her messy hair and caress her cheeks with his old fingers. His eyes were fixed on her face. It was as if he could see Mu Qingsheng's shadow through Mu Wanru. The love and gentleness on his face revealed a hint of morbid distortion. He lowered his head and kissed Mu Wanru on the lips. Mu Yaja knew in his heart that the reason why Mu Sheng arranged this marriage was because his obsession and lovesickness for Mu Wanru was in his bones. At first, he did not care much about his marriage. He thought that marriage was nothing more than a formality, and anyone could do it. Now, however, he had his own obsession. He was determined to call off the engagement. Mu Yaja no longer looked at Mu Sheng's ruthless face. Instead, he slowly stood up. His lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Grandpa, no matter what you think, I've made up my mind. I'll hold a family meeting to announce the cancellation of my engagement with her." "You dare!" Mu Sheng, too, stood up with the help of his walking stick. Glaring at him, his wrinkled hand trembled as he gripped the walking stick tightly. "As long as I'm around, your marriage agreement will be valid for a day. I will never allow you to cancel your engagement with Wanru. And you, Mu Yaja, Mu Yaja." After saying that, he walked upstairs. He was infuriated. This rascal was clearly going to fight him to the end. For a lowly actress in the entertainment industry, he actually ignored his orders. Shocked and furious, he threw the cane in his hand at Mu Yaja's back. "Pa!" A slap sounded. The agarwood cane fell heavily on his back. Mu Yaja paused and slowly turned around. His eyes were filled with arrogance and coldness as he looked at Mu Sheng. Mu Wanru was shocked to see this. She hurried forward to support the trembling Mu Sheng. Chapter 607. His majestic and powerful words reverberated in the spacious main hall. Even Mu Wanru could not help but be shocked. Grandpa Mu was actually threatening Mu Yaja with the inheritance of the Mu family's head. While Mu Wanru was shocked, she was also secretly pleased with herself. Grandpa Mu's love for her made her even more fearless. The corners of Mu Yaja's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Yes, how could he forget? When Grandpa Mu announced this marriage, he also announced that he would be the successor of the Mu family's head. How could he forget that the reason he was able to obtain the right of inheritance was not because of how outstanding he was? It was completely established on this engagement. The only reason he agreed to this marriage was because Grandpa Mu had openly promised him that if he were to get married to Mu Wanru, he would give him the inheritance of the Mu family's head. Needless to say, this was very tempting to him. The Mu clan was a big clan, but its internal affairs were complicated. There were too many interests involved. It would not be an exaggeration to describe the Mu family as a royal family in ancient times. Putting aside the Mu family's side branches and his illegitimate children, the old man had 3 wives. These 3 wives were very capable and gave birth to 5 sons and 3 daughters for him. At that time, among the 5 sons, the old man was most satisfied with Mu Lianjue, who was from the 3rd wife. Be it in terms of means, ability, or charisma, Mu Lianjue was the most outstanding among the 5 sons and the most promising candidate to inherit the Mu family's head. Alas, the old man was very particular about the distinction between the legitimate son and the concubine. No matter how outstanding Mu Lianjue was and how much he admired him, he was still a concubine's son. He felt that a concubine's son would not be able to enter the Hall of Elegance. Since ancient times, there was no reason for a concubine's son to inherit the family's head. Mu Liansheng was the legitimate son. Although he was not as outstanding as Mu Lianjue in all aspects, he was still a candidate for the family's head due to his status as a legitimate son. It was just that this Mu Liansheng was about to take over the Mu clan's authority, but he passed away at such a young age. As a result, the position of the Mu clan's patriarch had always been empty. As for the Mu group's authority, it had always been in Mu Sheng's hands. However, he was getting on in years, and he had yet to choose a successor, which inevitably caused internal strife within the family. In ancient times, there was a 9 dragons competition for the throne. At that time, Emperor Kangxi had 24 sons, and 9 of them participated in the competition for the throne. Looking at the rich and powerful families, in order to fight for the position of patriarch and become the master of the family, there were many cases where brothers in the family turned against each other and killed each other. That was because he was anxious to select a successor to be the Mu family's head, so as to stabilize the family's internal affairs and prevent unnecessary turmoil. Mu Sheng had been looking for the next family head, and Mu Yaja was the one he was most satisfied with. Even though Mu Yaja was only 14 at that time, he had already won Mu Sheng's admiration. He felt that among the many young people, Mu Yaja's ability was incomparably eye-catching. At that time, the young Mu Yaja was also eager to obtain the right to be the Mu family's head, so as to stabilize his position in the family. Mu Yinsheng passed away early, leaving behind an orphan and a widow. Mu Yaja was only 14 years old, but he was already well-versed in the rich and powerful families. If he did not have authority, he would only be bullied without being able to retaliate. Chapter 608. Hence, Mu Yaja silently agreed to this marriage. Hence, he became the sole successor of the Mu family. He entered the Mu group at the age of 18. Ever since he took over the reins of the Mu group at the age of 20 and took over the position as Dishing Financial Group CEO, 9 years of hardships had entrenched his power. The huge Dishing group was now completely under his control. If he were to leave, the huge Mu group would probably collapse overnight. Without him, Dishing would only become a wasteland. Now, Mu Sheng was actually threatening him with inheritance rights? What a joke. Did Mu Sheng really think that he would care about the Mu family's inheritance rights now? He was no longer the Mu Yaja of 15 years ago. He turned around and fixed his gaze on Mu Sheng. His eyes were bone-chilling and cold. Just as Mu Sheng thought that he would compromise and retract his rebellious words, he heard Mu Yaja's lips curl up expressionlessly. Arrogant and cold words escaped from his lips. You can give a Mu family's inheritance rights to whoever you want. Mu Sheng's face darkened when he heard this. What did you say? I made myself very clear. Mu Yaja smiled. His tone was laced with mockery. Grandpa is indeed getting old. I'm afraid that my ears are not working well anymore. Unfilial son, you've really grown up. Mu Sheng was infuriated by his son's words. He clutched his chest tightly as anger surged in his chest. Are you really going to give up your inheritance rights for a despicable woman? Are you really going to give up everything for her, even if it means giving up your inheritance rights and losing everything? Mu Yaja sneered, dismissing his ridiculous words. The Mu group will lose everything if it loses me. Mu Sheng's murky eyes narrowed dangerously. This lad is really arrogant. Mu Sheng narrowed his eyes. He had always known his grandson's character. He was incomparably arrogant and would never take any threats seriously. However, in the end, he was still too young, too arrogant, and even somewhat ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. Did he really think that the huge Mu group would become a pile of loose sand without him? Clearly, the old man did not buy it. However, the old man was still shocked by Mu Yaja's arrogant words. This kid, at such a young age, had far more courage than he had in the past. Unknowingly, he had already become a figure that could not be underestimated. The younger generation would surpass the older. Even if he didn't believe it, he still had to carefully weigh how much power this kid had. Mu Sheng's face darkened. He was not serious with his earlier words and did not intend to remove him from the family head's position. He was merely trying to scare the lad, but he did not expect the latter to be so insolent and lose his confidence instead. Mu Yaja suddenly said in a deep voice, "Also, Grandpa, please be clear that she's not a despicable woman. She's the woman that I, Mu Yaja, have set my eyes on." After a pause, his cold and mocking gaze landed on Mu Wanru, who had a complicated expression on her face. He coldly retorted, "Compared to her, Grandpa, you want me to marry a woman of unknown origin. Don't you think this is the most ridiculous thing?" Chapter 609. Isn't that the case? Grandpa, are you so sure that this woman is the one you're looking for? Mu Yaja's face instantly turned cold. His gaze landed on Mu Wanru's pale face, and his lips curled into a mocking smile. Take a closer look at her. How is she similar to the woman you're longing for? Mu Wanru's heart sank as she looked at Mu Yaja's cold expression. She had always been good at reading people's expressions. With just one look, she knew that this man had lost his patience with her. Hearing this, Mu Sheng followed Mu Yaja's gaze to Mu Wanru's face. His gaze was probing and scrutinizing. The blatant suspicion in his eyes made Mu Wanru's face turn pale. She subconsciously took a step back in fright. Clutching her clothes, she called out weakly and helplessly, "Grandpa!" Her innocent and pitiful eyes brought him back to his senses. He immediately denied it. Impossible. She's Ching Ching's daughter. She had done 2 consecutive paternity tests, and the results proved that she was Mu Ching Ching's daughter. So what if her features were not similar? This did not constitute evidence. Mu Yaja sneered. Just as he was about to speak, Mu Wanru gently interrupted him. "Grandpa." She pursed her lips and walked to him with a lonely and helpless expression. Holding his hand, she said sadly, "Since he wants to cancel the engagement with me, how can I force him? He doesn't have me in his heart, so it's fine to cancel the engagement. Anyway, I only want to be by Grandpa's side for the rest of my life. Grandpa, please don't chase me away. I can't bear to part with Grandpa. I only want to be by your side. It's just that." Halfway through her words, she lowered her eyelashes in incomparable sadness. Her hand slowly moved to her flat lower abdomen, and her lips couldn't help but tremble slightly in sadness. When Mu Sheng saw this, he thought that she was upset over Mu Yaja's annulment. He felt guilty and heartache at the same time. Just as his hand touched the back of her hand, 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto the withered back of his hand, wetting it. "What's wrong?" he asked in a panic. "Grandpa, what should I do? What about the baby in my belly?" Mu Wanru suddenly gritted her teeth and made up her mind. Then, she pretended to break down and cried bitterly. "What should I do with my child?" Mu Sheng was taken aback, and a puzzled look surfaced on his face. What with the child she was talking about? Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. His deep gaze followed Mu Wanru's movements and landed on her flat stomach. For a moment, he didn't know what this woman was up to. Mu Wanru was in agony. Tears streamed down her face, and her throat was choked with sobs. She said in a trembling voice, "Grandpa, I only just found out about it. I didn't dare to believe it at first. But after checking, I found out that I only found out about the good news today. I wanted to tell you today, but..." Mu Wanru suddenly raised her tear-stained face and looked sadly at Mu Yaja. Her eyes were filled with disappointment and heartbreak. "Aja doesn't want me anymore. It's fine if he doesn't want me anymore. But does he not want the child in my belly, too?" With a boom, Mu Sheng's mind went blank as if a white light had exploded. She was pregnant. Could it be that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child? Mu Yaja's eyes widened at her words, and his face turned cold. Chapter 610. Could it be that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child? Mu Sheng immediately grasped Mu Wanru's wrist tightly as he looked at Mu Yaja in shock and suspicion. Wasn't this child congenitally infertile? Why was she now saying that she was pregnant with his child? Mu Yaja was stunned when he heard this. His eyes widened slightly as his face turned cold. What trick was this woman playing with him? Pregnant. He didn't remember ever laying a finger on her. "Hence," he said in disgust, "Mu Wanru, don't put on airs." "I'm not." She held his hand tightly and clarified nervously and fearfully. "Grandpa, I only found out about it today, too. I originally wanted to tell you all this good news, but I didn't expect it to happen. But Aja said that he wants to call off the engagement with me, so this good news became bad news. But I'm really pregnant." Mu Yaja finally saw how shameless this woman could be. He suddenly recalled that when he was having sex with that little woman last night, she suddenly lost control and questioned him. "You said that I belong to you. So who do you belong to?" "Mu Wanru." Could it be, when he was not in the country, Mu Wanru came to show off in front of her and claimed that she was pregnant with his child to humiliate her? Obviously, she believed it. Was that why she had blacklisted his number and treated him so coldly, as if he hadn't seen him at all? She even asked him not to touch her out of humiliation. She even despised him for being dirty, just because she believed Mu Wanru's words? Mu Yaja instantly figured out the ins and outs of the matter, but he still felt a little annoyed. This stupid woman believed everything she heard. Was her trust in him so weak? She really needed to be taught a lesson. However, Mu Yaja did not expect Mu Wanru to jump into the fire pit herself. Or was her bluff just a delaying tactic? If that was the case, then Mu Wanru's scheming was deeper and harder to predict than he thought. He had not touched her at all, yet she dared to announce that she was pregnant with his child. Was she not afraid that he would do a paternity test after the child was born? Or Muyaja's handsome eyes widened, and they turned cold in an instant? Or did she not intend to keep the child at all? On the other hand, Mu Sheng's heart ached so much that it was about to bleed when he saw Mu Wanru's weak and helpless look. He immediately comforted her. Ro-er, don't be anxious. Grandpa believes you. Grandpa believes you. Come and sit down. With that, he coaxed and cajoled Mu Wanru to sit on the sofa beside him. After a moment of shock, his face lit up with joy. Ro-er, what nonsense are you spouting? It's a good thing that you're pregnant. It's a great thing. Don't worry. With that, he patted Mu Wanru's back and turned to face Mu Yaja angrily. How can you say that? Ro is pregnant with your child. Isn't this great thing? What do you mean by pretentious? What are you talking about? You don't even have the basic responsibility of a man. Outrageous. Mu Yaja frowned slightly and coldly said, Grandpa, I didn't touch her. Even if she's pregnant, it's not my child. Chapter 6:11. This is outrageous. It wasn't easy for you to have child. This is a good thing. How can you abort it? Mu Sheng was furious as he accused him. You unfilial son, don't you even acknowledge your own child? Wanru has been helping you wholeheartedly, but what about you? You don't even acknowledge your own child. She's pregnant. If the child isn't yours, whose can it be? Mu Wanru had always maintained a virtuous image in front of Mu Sheng. Naturally, he believed her words without a doubt. Instead, he thought that this unfilial son of his was irresponsible and did not even acknowledge his own child. But he's the child's father. Why won't he acknowledge his own child? Mu Wanru looked at Mu Sheng sadly. Tears streamed down her face as her voice trembled and choked. Her whole body trembled. Seeing this, Mu Sheng's heart ached even more. He immediately pulled her into his arms and comforted her gently. Don't cry, child. You've been wronged. Don't be afraid. Grandpa is here to stand up for you. You just have to focus on recuperating. Don't worry about anything else. Grandpa. Mu Wanru threw herself into his arms with a wronged look and cried sadly. Hearing her cries, Mu Sheng's heart seemed to be cut with a bloody wound, and it hurt sharply. Mu Yaja raised a brow slightly, his lips pursed and stiff. This woman's acting skills are superb. Those best actresses in the entertainment industry can't even compare to half of her acting skills. If not for his sense of propriety, he would have been deceived by her innocent face and suspected whose child the child in her stomach belonged to. Regarding this, he did not intend to explain further. In this situation, Mu Sheng only believed Mu Wanru's side of the story. No matter how he explained, he would not be able to defend himself. On the other side, Mu Sheng's heart ached as he covered the back of Mu Wanru's hand and comforted her. Rower, don't be sad. If he doesn't acknowledge this child, Grandpa will. Sigh, you have to think about yourself. You're pregnant now. Don't cry. Mu Wanru's bluff was done out of desperation. She had no choice but to resort to it. In order to protect his identity from being exposed, he did not hesitate to take the risk. She was keenly aware that Mu Yaja must have seen through her identity, but she didn't know when he realized it. Let's not talk about this for now. Seeing that her identity was about to be exposed, Mu Wanru had no choice but to reveal the fact that she was pregnant. Since Mu Yaja was aware of her identity, she could only use his trust in her to claim that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child. Mu Sheng would definitely be overjoyed and believe her words. He would then arrange her marriage with Mu Yaja as soon as possible. Once the wedding was completed, she would officially become the young madam of the Mu family. Then, everything would be much easier to handle. She was not afraid of Mu Yaja's denial. Compared to him, Mu Sheng would definitely believe her words more. Even if they had to do a DNA test, Mu Wanru would not be afraid or guilty. Previously, she had seriously calculated the time of her pregnancy. It had only been 5 weeks since she had sex with Aaron. That was during her safe period, so it was impossible for her to have conceived at that time. Hence, according to the world's judgment, she estimated that she was about 3.5 weeks pregnant. Chapter 6:12. A paternity test was not something he could do just because he wanted to. Even if he insisted on having her undergo an amniocentesis, Mu Sheng would not agree to it. This was because the amniocentesis needed to be done under mature conditions. If it was done too early, there was a high risk of miscarriage. Usually, amniocentesis could only be done after 3 months of pregnancy. Mu Sheng had always valued the Mu family's bloodline, so naturally, he would not allow it so easily. With his protection, she could ensure her safety for at least 2 months. This meant that she still had 2 months. 2 months later, she had plenty of ways to let nature take its course for her miscarriage. By then, as long as she acted quickly, Mu Yaja would be helpless even if he wanted to prove that the child was not his. It was as she had expected. Mu Yaja stood on the escalator and watched this farce from above. She heard him say coldly, "Won't the truth be out if the child is mine after a paternity test?" Mu Wanru raised her head and said righteously, "Fine, I'll do it with you. If you want to do a paternity test with me, then I'll do it with you. This way, I can prove my innocence." She met his cold gaze without a trace of guilt or panic on her face. To a certain extent, this was undoubtedly a provocation. Mu Yaja's eyes darkened, but he heard Mu Sheng cut her off sternly. No, the third madam had undergone an amniocentesis before, so he knew very well that it was quite dangerous for the fetus and could easily lead to a miscarriage. He slammed the table and stood up, scolding Mu Yaja. "This is outrageous. Can the child still be saved if we do an amniocentesis now? Are you crazy?" "Grandpa, I'm fine. Since he wants to verify if the child in my womb is his, then let him verify it. I have a clear conscience, anyway," Mu Wanru immediately said from his side. Mu Sheng said helplessly, "Silly Roer, you don't understand at all. You're just pregnant. How can you do an amniocentesis? I'm afraid it'll be difficult to keep the child." Mu Wanru pretended to be angry and mumbled, "It's fine if you don't want it. Anyway, he doesn't recognize this child. If the child is born and knows that his biological father doesn't recognize him, he will be very sad. Don't lower yourself to his level. Anyway, Grandpa won't allow you to do it. Just focus on taking care of the fetus and don't worry about the rest." He coaxed at once. Mu Wanru wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes with a square handkerchief. Her head hung low, but at an angle where the old man could not see. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. Mu Yaja did not miss the sinister smirk on her face. The man frowned, but then he thought of something and his thin lips suddenly curled up coldly. He seemed to know who this child belonged to. He had to admit that this woman was very thoughtful. She was meticulous in everything, no matter how big or small. She didn't leave out any clues. Presumably, this was just her stalling tactic. After these 3 months, she would definitely quietly create an accident so that the child in her belly would naturally be aborted, wouldn't she? But this woman was still too naive. He had long expected this. 6 years ago, when they got engaged, Mu Sheng urged him to get married as soon as possible. The old man did not want to delay their wedding too much. He wholeheartedly hoped that the two would get married and have children as soon as possible so that the Mu family could flourish. Chapter 613. Alas, Mu Wanru was merely a pawn he used in exchange for the inheritance of the Mu family. He could get engaged to her, and he did not mind getting married to her. Impossible. Hence, he fabricated the news of her being infertile. Everyone believed it to be the truth. When Mu Sheng learned of Mu Wanru's infertility, he, who had always valued his family line, was somewhat hesitant. The marriage was delayed again and again because of this. Mu Wanru also believed it to be true and thought that she was infertile. Unbeknownst to her, she was merely a pawn in the man's game of chess from the start. Moreover, he already had evidence of her cheating on him. Be it the audio tape or the CCTV footage, how could the evidence in his hands not prove her innocence? This woman was too naive. Playing such a clumsy game with him was truly laughable. Was she really so naive to think that he would not be able to produce evidence of her cheating other than an amniocentesis and a paternity test? Mu Yaja smiled. "Grandpa, if you find out one day that the child in her stomach is not mine, what will you do?" Mu Sheng's heart skipped a beat as he looked at him. Then, his doubtful gaze landed on Mu Wanru. Hearing this, the latter shook her head innocently and said timidly, Grandpa, you must believe me. If it's possible, I could do a paternity test now. He could deny the child in my stomach, but he can't belittle my innocence like this. Mu Sheng hurriedly said, Wanru, Grandpa believes you. When the child in your stomach is 5 months old, we could do a paternity test to prove your innocence. All right, I'll produce evidence to prove your innocence. Mu Yaja's face was calm, and his eyes were cold. He then turned around and went upstairs expressionlessly. His cold voice made Mu Wanru's bones tremble uncontrollably. This man seemed to be scarier than she had imagined. What other tricks did he have up his sleeve that she didn't know about? Mu Wanru couldn't help but feel a little flustered. She didn't know if he really had some secret evidence in his hands. She was very careful, so she shouldn't have left any traces behind. He shouldn't be caught red-handed. However, Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with disdain and fierceness, as if he really had something that could be used against her. She couldn't suppress the panic in her heart. She couldn't help but feel that this man must have evidence of her in his hands. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm as if victory was within his grasp. Ever since she said that she was pregnant, his face had never revealed a look of surprise. It was as if he had expected this. Could it be that he knew she could get pregnant? Thinking of this possibility, Mu Wanru couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Regarding her diagnosis of infertility 6 years ago, there were still a lot of doubts. It was very strange. She had never believed that it was impossible for her to conceive. Could it be that this man was the one behind this matter? Thinking of this, Mu Wanru instantly broke out in cold sweat. Her lips trembled uncontrollably from immense fear. Mu Sheng touched her hand and felt that her fingertips were extremely cold. He looked up and saw the cold sweat rolling down her face. The fear in her eyes could no longer be concealed and was on the verge of bursting out. Chapter 614. Mu Wanru held his hands, intending to add fuel to the fire. Grandpa, I'm scared. I'm really scared. You have to believe me. If the child in my stomach isn't his, who else can it be? Didn't he accuse me of having an affair with another man? How can I do that? Grandpa, you have to believe me. I won't do anything to let him, you, or the Mu family down. Am I right? The old man nodded his head repeatedly, clearly believing her words. I believe you. How can my rower do such a thing? Grandpa believes you. But he really wants to do a paternity test with me. Grandpa, it's not that I don't dare to do it. It's just that I can't bear to part with this child. If the child in my stomach gets hurt, I really don't know if I can still have a child in this lifetime. Mu Wanru's tearful and pitiful look made his heart ache even more. He kept consoling her. Good girl. Don't worry. Grandpa is here. No one is allowed to touch a strand of your hair. I won't allow anyone to harm the Mu family's bloodline. Don't be sad. Even if he doesn't acknowledge this child, Grandpa will. Mu Wanru was overjoyed, but her face revealed an aggrieved and touched expression. She threw herself into his arms and cried, Yes, Grandpa loves Rower the most. Nestled in his arms, Mu Wanru could not stop sobbing sadly. Her face was filled with panic and fear. Song Qingling Kindergarten. At the school gate, children were being led by the teachers to the school bus hand in hand. Yun Tianyu stood at the school gate and sent a message to Li Hanlin. When he raised his head, he was surrounded by a group of innocent and adorable Lolas. They were like stars surrounding the moon. He was used to seeing this, though. Yin Tianyu's face darkened slightly. His beautiful, jet-black hair fell softly to his ears, and his pair of eyes were especially bright and beautiful. A little girl reached out to tug at the corner of his shirt in an attempt to say a few words to him. Just a word would do. Yin Tianyu gently turned his body away, seemingly repulsed by her intimacy. The little girl, however, did not seem to mind at all. Instead, she smiled contentedly at him and asked, Yu, where are your parents? Do you always go home alone? Yin Tianyu expressionlessly turned his head away, not wanting to bother with her. However, the naive child mistakenly thought that he was a little disappointed. Her expression was a little pitiful as she grabbed his sleeve and said, Yu, I can accompany you. He expressionlessly took out his phone and looked at the time. So slow. Did Li Hanlin's car break down on the road? The little fangirls behind him were still chattering around him. He couldn't help but have a dull headache. Thus, he turned to look at the innocent little girl and ordered her to leave. "Don't stand beside me." How annoying. He had already been tortured by them for an entire day. They couldn't even spare him after school. A bunch of kids who couldn't even count on their fingers when it came to addition and subtraction. How could they communicate with each other when their IQs were not even on the same channel? Yu was the little Prince Charming in the kindergarten. Not only the little girls, but even the teachers from other classes would often run to the classroom door and look at him through the window as if they were fangirls. "Aya, so cute. If I can have such a cute baby, I'll be so happy." Chapter 615. TSK, how annoying. It was like a rare animal being watched all day long. It was really annoying. What was it about his mommy saving the universe in her past life? His mommy was the woman he loved the most in the world. Even if his mommy was not a Superman who saved the world in her past life, she was still the one he loved the most. Just as the pitiful little munchkin was being pestered by a bunch of fangirls, a hero finally came to save him on a rainbow cloud. A flashy Bugatti Veyron sports car stopped at the school gate. When Lee Hamlin got out of the car, the cool sports car instantly attracted a round of exclamations from the passersby. "Oh God, Bugatti Veyron. This is a limited edition sports car. It's very expensive. I've seen it in a magazine. This sports car is worth tens of millions. Oh God, this is my first time seeing a real car." The flashy luxury car attracted the attention of the passersby. Many of them took out their phones to take short videos and post them to their friends. Some of them had only seen sports cars in magazines and had never seen Lee Hamlin's limited edition sports car, which cost tens of millions, which was flown over from the supercar kingdom. Yin Tianyo's lips twitched. He was speechless as he looked at the passersby who were touching the car and posing for selfies from time to time. Spotting the little lad's figure in the crowd, Lee Hamlin immediately walked over to him in a fawning manner. "Director Yin, I'm late." Hee. Yin Tianyu glared at him in displeasure. Just as he was about to flare up, Lee Hamlin, who seemed to know what he was going to say next, hurriedly kowtowed to him and begged for mercy. "Please don't deduct my salary. Director Yin, it's really hard to save money for a wife." Yu, Lee Hamlin blinked his eyes and gave him a flattering smile. Yin Tianyu felt disgusted. "Enough. Give me a reason for being late, or else your bonus will be deducted." "Yes, I really have a reason for being late." Lee Hamlin immediately defended himself. "Speak. I found out something today. Let me carry you to the car first, and then I'll tell you slowly." With that, Lee Hamlin bent over and carried him into the car. There was a child safety seat in the front passenger seat specially prepared for him. "This thing is so childish. I'm not a child. I don't want to sit on it." Feeling wronged, Lee Hamlin said, "CEO Yun, there's nothing you can do if you don't want to. It's for your safety. Moreover, the country's law stipulates that children under the age of 8 must sit in the safety seat." Yun Tianyo's face was full of bitterness. That's right. He's not even 8 years old. In the car, Lee Hamlin passed a stack of documents to him. Yin Tianyu took the documents and skimmed through them. His brows furrowed slightly. "You sent someone to tail Mu Wanru?" "Yes. We'll be on guard 24/7. "You've done well." Yin Tianyu gave him a rare compliment as his lips curled into a smile. "You'll get a raise this month." Lee Hamlin immediately cheered. "Long live President Yun." Yin Tianyu lowered his head and flipped through a few more documents. His gaze suddenly landed on a pregnancy diagnosis report. He scanned it carefully and was startled. "This woman is pregnant." "Yes." "How can that be?" Yin Tianyu asked suspiciously. "Isn't she congenitally infertile?" "I'm not sure about that." Lee Hamlin paused for a moment and then sorted out the matter in detail. Mu Wanru purposely chose an unknown private hospital and bribed a gynecologist to do a pregnancy test to deceive others. Chapter 616. Pregnant. Yin Tianyu stared fixedly at the report. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, as if he wanted to pierce through the paper. How could this woman be pregnant? Didn't they say that she was congenitally unable to conceive? Why was there such a pregnancy diagnosis now? What a joke. Yin Tianyu doubtfully reread the diagnosis report several times to make sure that he was not mistaken. Is this news reliable? It's reliable. This woman is really pregnant. Lee Hamlin patiently explained while observing his expression. Who was the father of the child in her belly? Was it Muyage's? The asterisk M in it. Yin Tianyu crumpled the pregnancy diagnosis report into a ball. His beautiful eyes were burning with indignation. He had clearly laid his cards on the table. Since he wanted to woo his mother and be his daddy, he had to get rid of all the women around him. This was his bottom line, his principle, and his mother's bottom line. It was not to be violated. What did he say to him back then? He said that he would handle it well. In the end, he got such a diagnosis report. Yin Tianyu's face was cold and tense. His pink lips formed a stiff arc as he frowned. Didn't I tell him to get rid of all the women around him? If Mommy finds out about this, she'll be heartbroken. He lowered his head to look at the crumpled report in his hand. Suddenly thinking of something, he frowned and asked, "You're saying that she went to a private hospital for a pregnancy test to cover up her pregnancy?" "Yes." Lee Hamlin nodded. The Mu Group controls 90% of the medical centers in the capital, so the files of the medical centers are kept in the system. This private hospital is located in a small town on the outskirts of the city, so the medical system is not connected to the internet. When she went out, she was dressed in a very simple and low-key manner. She even wore sunglasses and a mask. Hearing this, Yun Tianyu's fingertips lightly tapped on his knees as if he were analyzing something. He got a conclusion from Lee Hamlin's words. Yin Tianyu suddenly said in a low voice, "Hearing what you said, I suspect that the child in her stomach is not my daddy's." His words came to an abrupt halt. Yin Tianyu was stunned. He had unconsciously called that man my daddy. Yin Tianyu pursed his lips, cleared his throat awkwardly, and corrected himself. "I suspect that the child in her stomach isn't Mu Yaja's." Lee Hamlin was puzzled. "What do you mean? If the child in her stomach is Mu Yaja's, then it will undoubtedly be a great surprise to her. The Mu family is the richest family in the capital, and they attach great importance to their descendants. If she is pregnant with Mu Yaja's flesh and blood, the mother's status will rise because of the child. With a son and a daughter by her side, her position will be even more stable." Pausing for a moment, he suddenly narrowed his eyes dangerously. "But you said that she deliberately chose a private hospital and even bribed the doctor to secretly do a pregnancy test in order to hide her pregnancy from the public. It was as if her pregnancy was something that couldn't be exposed. Don't you think it's strange?" After his detailed analysis, Lee Hamlin instantly saw through the trick. "Director Yun, are you saying that Mu Wanru's child isn't Muyaja's?" Chapter 617. Yun Tianyu even managed to deduce something from this incident. Muyaja had never laid a finger on Mu Wanru. Yun Tianyu's heart was instantly satisfied. If Muyaja really gave him a half-brother or sister, he would not acknowledge it. Lee Hamlin could not help but raise his eyebrows in amazement at Yun Tianyu's wit and intelligence. "Director Yun, if you didn't mention it, I would have thought that your daddy had impregnated her." Yu glanced at him contemptuously and mocked him mercilessly. "Agently, do you think I'm like you? Do you have a low IQ?" Lee Hamlin felt aggrieved by Yu's contemptuous gaze. Did he have to be so black-bellied? Did he have to be so sharp-tongued? He even mocked him for having a low IQ. Lee Hamlin's face was filled with grief and indignation. "I'm bitter inside, but I won't say it out loud. If I say it out loud, my bonus will be deducted." Lee Hamlin pursed his lips in puzzlement. Since the child in Mu Wanru's stomach isn't Mu Yaja's, then whose is it? "It's definitely not yours," Yin Tianyu replied abruptly. Lee Hamlin was at a loss for words. "I know it's definitely not mine." "That's an interesting question." Yu gave him a sidelong glance, expressionlessly. "You're asking me whose child it is. How would I know? Do you think I'm a god?" Lee Hamlin clapped his hands in glee. It seemed that this child was not a god. He did not know everything. After all, this time, it was his turn to be satisfied. "Director Yun, your mommy is filming. Don't you need to visit her?" Lee Hamlin suddenly asked. "No need. My mommy scenes are all-night scenes. It must be tough on her. When she's done with the night scenes, I'll definitely nourish her well." As Yu spoke, he started to organize a diet in his mind. He planned to nourish Yun Shirshir's body with more food when she returned home. Lee Hamlin was so envious that he was about to die. "Aya, Why didn't he have such a filial son? Well, he didn't even have a wife. In the future, when she had children, she must use Yun Tianyu as a benchmark. She would educate her children on the path of 24 filial piety from a young age and raise them into a smart and filial son like Yun Tianyu. Boss, based on the analysis from multiple angles, Miss Yun is jealous of you. In the CEO's office of Dishing Financial Group, Minyu raised his head from the thick stack of psychology books on his desk. He adjusted his glasses and spoke seriously. Muyaja leaned back in his office chair with a thoughtful look on his face. Then he stared at him suspiciously. Really? Probably. Minyu immediately explained. That's what the book says. Read it out, I want to hear it. Muyaja immediately ordered. Minyu nodded his head and said, no matter if it's a man or a woman, when they see their partner interacting with someone of the opposite sex, they will always feel uncomfortable. In psychology, it's called jealousy. Continue. Muyaja nodded and ordered him to continue reading. Chapter 618. He needs constant proof of his love. The thought of a possible love rival will arouse strong suspicion and accusations from him, a selfish person. This kind of baseless attack will make him feel wronged and tired at first. Later on, it will become an insult and unbearable. Muyaja was stunned. Why did Minyu's behavior and symptoms seem to be more similar to his? Could it be that when he saw Gu Xingze kissing her that day, he flew into a rage because he was jealous? But when he saw his woman with another woman, shouldn't it be natural for him to be angry? Muyaja suddenly leaned forward slightly and clasped his hands together. He frowned and said, Minyu. Yes, boss. Muyaja asked hesitantly. Is it normal for a man to be jealous of a woman? Minyu was taken aback. He immediately lowered his head and flipped through the pages of the book with his fingers. Muyaja was shocked by the speed of his hands. Minyu immediately flipped to the table of contents and read it to him with great emotion. Love without jealousy doesn't exist. Vinegar is not just a condiment in love. It's even a nutrient. The intensity of the vinegar is often proportional to the intensity of the love. So, looking back at the past and thinking about the present, if you're never jealous in a relationship, isn't this so-called love very suspicious? Practice is the only standard to test the truth. Jealousy is one of the standards to test whether true love is fake. In other words, when a person is jealous of another person, it's because he loves her and cares about her. Muyaja organized the paragraph into a sentence of truth. Minyu nodded hesitantly and said, that's roughly what it means. Muyaja frowned. He lowered his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and looked at Minyu in confusion. The latter's shoulders trembled as he stared at her. Minyu? Go ahead, boss. Have you ever been in love? No. Minyu was touched on his sore spot. He immediately shook his head pitifully. You've never been in love before? Muyaja glanced at him from head to toe with some disdain. He actually hired someone who had never been in a relationship to be his love psychology teacher. Minyu retorted, Boss, I haven't even earned enough money to get married. How would I dare to fall in love? Muyaja raised his eyebrows in displeasure and glared at him coldly. He rapped his knuckles on the table. If you want a raise, just say it. Minyu replied honestly, Boss, I want a raise. Muyaja ignored him. Reject it. Minyu looked as if he had nothing to live for. Muyaja ignored the resentment emanating from him and continued to ask, what does it mean for a woman to be jealous of a man? Unwillingly, Minyu lowered his head and flipped through the book. Then, he read it out one by one. When a woman is jealous, she will ignore you. Muyaja nodded. Just a few days after he left the country, this woman had blacklisted his number. Secondly, she will be cold to you. Muyaja nodded again. This woman was really damn cold to him. She gave him the cold shoulder. Could it be that she was jealous of him? Thirdly, she will lose her temper easily. 90% of women will lose their temper. Chapter 619. The fourth rule is that you will mock and ridicule without revealing your true feelings. That seemed to be the case. She'll compare herself to that woman. Muyaja rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Yin Shishir's words echoed in his ears again. You said that every part of my body belongs to you. What about you? Who do you belong to? Muwanru? She'll appear depressed, accompanied by sad crying, and unable to recover from the setback. Minyu listed out the reactions of women to jealousy one by one. Even if he didn't list all of them, most of them matched. Could it be that the woman had blacklisted him, treated him coldly and alienated him, secretly mocked and ridiculed him, and even compared him to other women? These were all reactions of jealousy. Muyaja naturally put it into the equation. Jealousy equals love. Did that mean that this woman was jealous because she liked him? Muyaja couldn't help but smile at this realization. The coldness in his eyes gradually eased, and there was a hint of joy. Minyu raised his head and looked at the excitement and complacency on his boss's face in shock. Under his gaze, Muyaja came back to his senses. However, when he saw Minyu staring at him so blatantly, he immediately stopped smiling, cleared his throat, and glared at Minyu unhappily. Continue reading your book. Minyu immediately calmed down and didn't dare to look at him again. You have to be good at controlling your emotions and respecting the other party's feelings. You have to know that she's not your private property. She's my private property. Muyaja corrected him unhappily. She has the right to be with others, and even to love others. Muyaja immediately interrupted him with a cold look in his eyes. She has no right to be with men other than me, and she has no right to love other men. The strong and dangerous aura emanating from him shocked Minyu so much that he didn't dare to speak for a long time. Minyu, boss, is this book authentic? Muyaja questioned. How can there be such a ridiculous statement? Yeah. Minyu flipped to the next page and added, it also says that although being jealous is a sign of liking someone, it's still far from true love. If you're jealous, there's only one way out, to use love to get love back. Using love to obtain love? Muyaja couldn't help but fall into deep thought as he leaned back in his chair with an unreadable expression on his face. Do women have a deep obsession with marriage? What do women usually think about marriage? Minyu shook his head blankly. I don't know. He also wanted to answer this question. It was a pity that he didn't even have a girlfriend. Muyaja glared at him. If you don't know, then why aren't you investigating? Minyu immediately took out a book titled The Psychology of Marriage and started reading it silently. It's easy to fall in love, but it's hard to get along with each other. The biggest difference between marriage and love is that love is based on the other party's strengths, while marriage is based on the other party's weaknesses. In marriage and love, communication is often a big problem, and this is often caused by the difference in perception of love between men and women. Muyaja nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 620. Is that so? Muyaja mumbled doubtfully. Minyu replied, well, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. I don't really understand. Muyaja replied, marriage is just a piece of paper. Do women actually see it as a sense of security? He really couldn't understand what women were thinking. Muyaja was a little confused. Can't you get a divorce after you get married? Minyu thought about it seriously for a while and said, I think that women yearn for marriage not only because of the sense of security that a piece of paper can give them, but also because they yearn for their man's love to become a legitimate thing. Muyaja gently rubbed the thumb ring on his finger. His eyes were filled with thoughts, but he didn't say anything. Boss, do you not know how to coax a woman? Minyu winked slyly. Let me give you a suggestion. Let's hear it. Minyu immediately leaned over and whispered in his ear. Muyaja looked at him suspiciously. Will it work? Yes, it will definitely work. Women like romantic things. Muyaja glanced at him and pursed his lips. Go and arrange it. Okay. Yinshan, Shi, Villa District. Shi locked herself in her bedroom. She couldn't go anywhere for an entire day. She wanted to go home, but a servant stopped her at the door. Yinshan Shi Villa was located in a piece of land with good feng shui in the suburbs. It was far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. The scenery was picturesque and beautiful. When she walked out of the entrance, she could see a winding mountain road in the distance. It stretched for thousands of miles. Because it was a private villa area, there were basically no public transport routes or taxis. If she insisted on leaving, She would have to walk down the mountain to have a chance of getting a taxi. Yin Shishir was extremely frustrated. Muyaja, what was this man thinking? Why did he leave her alone in the villa and disappear without a trace? What was he doing? In the afternoon, Yu called to ask if the filming was going well. Of course, Yin Shishir couldn't tell her that she wasn't on set anymore. Originally, she was supposed to have a scene today, but after Muyaja's nonsense last night, she didn't know what the crew would think of her. What did Lin Fengtian think of her? She tried to summon up the courage to call Lin Fengtian and apologize. Because of her personal reasons, she had affected the normal progress of the crew. She felt very guilty about it, especially Muyaja, who had pushed Lin Fengtian to the ground so roughly. He must have been injured. Where's Gu Xingze? He should be injured as well, right? He was afraid that because of this, the progress of the production could only be temporarily delayed. Thinking of this, Yin Shishir felt guilty. In his heart, he hated Muyaja for being so unreasonable. In the evening, there was a knock on the bedroom door. Yin Shishir covered herself with the blanket and didn't want to bother with it. The knocking continued for a long time. Suddenly, the butler's polite voice came from the door. "Miss Yin, are you asleep?" "I'm asleep," Yin Shishir replied in annoyance. There was another silence outside the door. Then there was the soft sound of keys. Yin Shishir was shocked. She immediately sat up from the bed, put on her slippers, and walked to the door. However, the door that was originally locked was open from the outside. She couldn't help but feel a little angry. Didn't I say that I was asleep? Chapter 6:21. Yin Shishir was startled. "You want to send me home?" "Yes." The butler explained, "The president just called and asked us to send you home." Yin Shishir's face froze. She didn't know why, but when she found out that it was this man who asked the butler to send her home, she felt a little disappointed. However, it quickly dissipated. "He said he wanted to send me home?" "Yes," the butler said, and carefully handed over a small dress. "The president sent someone to give this to you. If you don't mind, we'll help you change into it." "What is this?" Yin Shishir's gaze fell on the small black dress. It was a Chanel haute couture dress. It was elegant and beautiful, and one could tell that it was worth a lot. It wasn't for formal banquets, but more like the small dresses worn by socialites in high society. It was simple, but it didn't lose its elegance. She couldn't help but frown. "I don't want it." She didn't want to wear the clothes he gave her. When the butler heard this, a panicked look appeared on his face. "Miss Yin, this is a little gift from the president. He repeatedly told us to help you change into it, otherwise. Miss Yin, please don't make it difficult for us." Yin Shishir said in a huff, "I don't want it. Tell him I don't like it." "You don't like this style?" the butler asked respectfully. This was a style personally chosen by the president. When they saw it, they also felt that Yin Shishir would look good in it. "I don't like this style," Yin Shishir said coldly. "The president didn't just send this one. If Miss Yin doesn't like it, there are a few more styles for you to choose from." With that, the butler immediately called out, and a row of fashion clerks in high-class uniforms rushed in. They spread out in front of her, each holding a set of high-class clothes of different styles for her to choose from. "Didn't you say you were going to send me home? Why did you make me change into this for a trial? Where's Muyaja? What is he trying to do?" Yin Shishir couldn't help but feel annoyed. She didn't know what he was trying to do. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads in confusion. "The president only told us to help you change into the dress and send you to the car. The car is already waiting for you outside." Upon hearing this, Yin Shishir immediately walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and lifted the curtains. When she saw a luxurious limousine parked outside the courtyard, she was momentarily baffled. She really could not fathom the man's intention. However, she turned around and looked at the troubled faces behind her. She suddenly sighed and pointed at the black dress and said, "Forget it. I won't make things difficult for you. Just this one. I will change into it myself." The servant's face immediately lit up with joy. She left the dress in the room and retreated out of the door. Yin Shishir changed into the gown and looked at the mirror. The black gown on her made her look even more elegant and slender. It also accentuated her snow-white skin. Her black hair, which was as beautiful as brocade, slanted from her shoulders to her waist. She exuded the aura of a socialite. As soon as she opened the door, the stylists waiting at the door immediately surrounded her. Hair, makeup, jewelry, and high heels were undoubtedly a huge project. Yin Shirshir felt that something was wrong. What are you trying to do? The stylists were also confused and shook their heads. Chapter 622. The Bentley slowly parked in the parking lot of Hushin Island. Hushin Island was artificially developed 2 years ago, and now it had become a landmark in the capital. And this restaurant was located on Hushin Island. It could be said to have a picturesque view. Bali Western Restaurant. It was the best Western restaurant for couples in the capital. It was very romantic. It was said that this Western restaurant only served one pair of couples a week. It was rumored that this was the most expensive restaurant in the capital. Whether it was the dishes or the fine wine, they were all extremely luxurious. Therefore, it was widely rumored that Bali's couple's set meal was worth tens of millions. Yin Shirshir initially found it unbelievable when she heard about it. How could anyone be stupid enough to spend 10 million on a Western meal? However, when she got out of the car, she was surprised to see a gorgeous cruise ship docked by the shore. It was so beautiful. It was already nighttime. The entire island was covered in colorful lights. It was extremely romantic. The night breeze blew a burst of floral fragrance. The flowers on the shore bloomed like a magnificent carpet. The sky was filled with bright stars. The lake was decorated with starlight and starlights. The scenery was breathtaking. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but be deeply attracted by the romantic scenery. She walked along the lakeside. The fragrance of flowers, the night view, and the starlights made her fall into a trance. When she came back to her senses, the car had already driven away. What did he mean? Why did he leave her here alone? Yin Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. Looking around, she saw a harbor not far away. The night view of Hushin Island was very beautiful. Not only that, there was also a port by the lake, equipped with a cruise ship. After boarding the cruise ship, one could travel around Hushin Island. However, the ticket price was not cheap, but it attracted many people. Therefore, there was a long line at the port. Many people were waiting to board the cruise ship to enjoy the beautiful night view. Yin Shirshir was obviously confused. She didn't know what Mu Yaja was doing. He let her wear such a gown and left her here alone. She didn't know how to get back to the city from here. She should be able to get a bus here, but she didn't have anything on her. She didn't bring her phone or wallet. He couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Seeing that there were people at the harbor, she thought to ask for directions and see if there was any way to return to the city. Thus, Yin Shirshir walked towards the harbor. Just now, she was walking in a hurry and didn't pay attention. When she brushed past a woman, she accidentally knocked the woman's phone to the ground. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She quickly apologized and lowered her head to pick up the phone. The woman said impatiently, "TSK, what's wrong with you? Don't you need to watch where you're going? Seriously." Yin Shirshir frowned slightly, but she didn't want to argue with this passerby. She picked up her phone, but when she raised her head to look at the woman, she was slightly stunned. It's her? The woman she bumped into was none other than Song Inya, whom she had bumped into at the hospital that day. How'd he meet her here? Yin Shirshir froze on the spot, a trace of doubt and surprise appearing on her face. This was too much of a coincidence. Song Inya had originally come to Hushin Island with her friends to take a cruise ship to enjoy the night view around the island. She bought a ticket, but she still had to wait in line, so she decided to go along the lake to enjoy the night view. Chapter 623. She was used to being spoiled, so she was about to flare up when she saw the person looking up. It was Yin Shirshir. She was shocked for a moment, and then suspicion appeared on her face. Without a doubt, she recognized the woman in front of her at a glance. That day, the screen displayed on Mu Yaja's phone was this woman's sleeping face. Yin Shirshir was very beautiful. She was different from those female celebrities in the entertainment industry who had walked out of the plastic surgery production line. Be it her facial features or temperament, she was very recognizable. Song Inya had a photographic memory after seeing that photo once. Unlike the sleeping face in the photo, she was now wearing an elegant black dress with delicate and clear light makeup on her face. Compared to the sleeping face in the photo, she had a more unique charm. She was more beautiful in person than in the photo. This was a fact that she was unwilling to admit. It was no wonder that Brother Mu seemed to dote on her. A woman like her was indeed the type that men would fall in love with. Her face was elegant and her temperament was otherworldly. If she were a man, she would be tempted as well. Why was she here, though? Yin Shishir felt a little strange when she saw Song Inya staring at her in shock. Naturally, she did not know that Song Inya had seen her photo on Muyaja's phone. She thought that Song Inya was angry at her for bumping into her, so she quickly handed the phone back to her. Sorry, I was careless just now. Take a look and see if the phone is damaged. Song Inya took the phone from her hand and lowered her head to take a look. There was no damage to the phone. Seeing that the phone was not damaged, Yin Shishir turned to leave. However, Song Inya called out to her. Yin Shishir. She called out her name directly. Yin Shishir was stunned and turned around in confusion. How did this woman know her name? She hadn't officially met her, had she? I didn't recognize the wrong person, did I? Song Inya raised her chin proudly and walked slowly toward her. Is this your name? She had a habit of checking Weibo. That day, the production team of The Green Apple posted a set photo on Weibo, and it quickly became a trending topic. She clicked on it and saw that it was her. At the same time, she knew her name. Yin Shishir. She remembered that the villa developed by the Mu family was called Yin Shanshir Yi. Was it just a coincidence? Or did Brother Mu purposely name it after this woman? Song Inya followed the Weibo account of the production team of The Green Apple. Ever since the start of filming, Yin Shishir's behind-the-scenes photos had the highest exposure rate. It was obvious that this woman was not ordinary. Yes, Yin Shishir is my name. You are. Yin Shishir looked at her and politely asked for her name. You don't deserve to know my name. Song Inya crossed her arms and retorted haughtily. When Yin Shishir heard this, the polite smile on her face immediately turned cold. This woman was really arrogant. She curled her lips and smiled. It's fine. I don't care anyway. It was as if she really wanted to know. She couldn't be bothered to lower herself to her level. Song Inya choked on her words. Is there anything else? Yin Shishir smiled gracefully. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Stop right there. Seeing that she was about to leave, Song Inya gritted her teeth and stomped her feet in jealousy. She chased after her and grabbed her shoulders. Chapter 624. What are you doing? Yin Shishir was furious as well. She shook off her grip abruptly, feeling that the other was being ridiculous. Why was she glaring at her as if she wanted to swallow her whole? Song Inya sneered and retorted, Did I say you could leave? That's strange. Who are you? Why should I listen to you? Yin Shishir was baffled. Are you crazy? Song Inya was so angry that she laughed. Crossing her arms over her chest, she glared fiercely at her. Yin Shishir, why don't you take a good look at your status? How dare you talk to me like that with your lowly status? Miss, what does my status have to do with you? You're so arrogant that I thought you were a princess from some royal family. Judging from your upbringing, you don't seem to have been educated in etiquette. Yin Shishir retorted mercilessly, leaving Song Inya at a loss for words. She did not expect Yin Shishir to be so sharp-tongued, despite her frail and harmless appearance. Song Inya pursed her lips coldly and suddenly took a step closer to her. Her pair of sinister eyes scanned her from head to toe before she laughed. I think you're just SOSO. At most, you're a little more seductive on the surface. I'm afraid you're really cheap deep down. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're socialite from the upper class just because you're wearing a gown? Dream on. A commoner will always be a commoner. Don't even think about marrying into the rich. Yin Shishir was stunned. She was confused by the other sarcasm. She did not know how she had offended this missy for her to be so hurtful. Song Inya continued. In this day and age, you're so righteous about being a third party in someone else's marriage? You've really opened my eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. Song Inya grabbed her wrist and spat viciously. B*TCH, you like to seduce men, don't you? You clearly know that Brother Mu has a fiancé, yet you're still shamelessly sticking to him. Don't you have any shame? What did you say? Yin Shishir angrily shook off her hand, but she stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence. Belatedly, he realized who the brother Mu she was talking about was. He also understood the hidden meaning behind her words. Mu Yaja. How could she have forgotten that this woman was Mu Yaja's cousin? But how did she know about him? Could it be that Mu Yaja mentioned it to her? What did he say to her? Yin Shishir's expression was a little ugly. Let me give you a piece of advice. As a woman, it's best to be thick-skinned. Brother Mu already has a fiancé, so you'd better stay away from him. If Grandpa Mu finds out that you've interfered in Brother Mu's marriage, he won't let you off. Song Inya's face was filled with disgust. The contempt in her eyes was so scorching that it could burn her skin. Although Yin Shishir was angry, she still looked up to meet her cold and disdainful gaze. She had no intention of backing down. She kept looking at Song Inya's face and saw a hint of jealousy and hatred on her face. There was almost no need to hide her jealousy. Is she jealous? Usually, when a woman shows such a vicious and jealous expression, that man must be very important in her heart. Chapter 6:25. She likes him? Yin Shishir pursed her lips. She still could not forget the scene she saw at the hospital previously. She used him and longed for his love for her. The expression on her face was not that of a sister's dependence on her brother. It was possessiveness, desire, an attachment that could not be obtained. There was no doubt that Song Inya liked Muyaja. It was just that, more or less, it was not appropriate for her to be so obvious. However, at least in her heart, her feelings for her cousin, Muyaja, were not that simple. Yin Shishir somewhat understood. On the surface, she was insulting her as a third party. In reality, how could Song Inya not yearn to stand beside Muyaja as a woman, and not as a cousin? After understanding it, Yin Shishir smiled and slowly said, I think you're wrong about something. What? Song Inya was stunned. I'm not a third party who interfered in his marriage. Yin Shishir raised her eyebrows, and an elegant yet cold smile appeared on her face. Muyaja has a fiancé, but it's just an engagement. Is he married? I don't think so. Where did the saying of interfering in a marriage come from? But Brother Mu and Mu Wanru are already engaged. Song Inya almost blurted out in anger. However, Yin Shishir noticed her choice of words. Mu Wanru. She called out her name almost without thinking. Presumably, this woman's heart was extremely unbalanced by the fact that Mu Wanru was Mu Yaja's fiancé. Yin Shishir smiled. So what? It's just an engagement. It's a marriage arranged by the family. There's no love or feelings between the two. Interfered? Ha! Song Inya was completely enraged by her sneer. Therefore, she sneered without thinking. Ha! Aren't you a little too naive? Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you sincerely? She's just toying with you. Do you really think that you can rise to the top and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? The Mu family was the richest family in the capital. How could Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into the Mu family? If you want to climb up the social ladder of the Mu family, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. His words were, without a doubt, mocking Yin Shishir for daydreaming. The blatant mockery was like a needle dipped in salt, fiercely piercing into his heart, causing him incomparable pain. Yin Shishir felt a stab of pain in her heart, but she still maintained an elegant smile on her face and asked, So what? You? Song Inya exclaimed in exasperation when she saw how shameless the other was. You're shameless. Actually, you're right. Yin Shishir pouted innocently. She had a helpless expression on her face, as if she had been seen through. I want to be promoted. I'm here to snatch your brother Mu Wanru's fiancé. I'm a third party. But, after a pause, Yin Shishir raised her eyes and glared at her coldly. What do you do to me? You. Song Inya raised her hand, wanting to slap the other's face in anger. Yin Shishir raised her hand and held it tightly. She exerted so much force that a deep red mark was almost left on the other's fair wrist. She looked as if she was boneless and weak, but Song Inya did not expect her to be so strong. Chapter 6:26. What's the matter? You can't win an argument, so you want to get physical? What a missy's temper. Yin Shishir suddenly flung her hand away. Caught off guard, Song Inya lost her balance and fell to the ground. Aha, interesting. You're Muyaja's cousin, aren't you? As soon as she finished speaking, Yin Shirshir casually walked over and looked down at her condescendingly. She leisurely asked, why? You can't hide the jealousy on your face, can you? Don't tell me that you like Muyaja. Her voice was casual, but there was a strong sense of sarcasm in it. Yun Shirshir's rhetorical question made Song Enya's face turn ghastly pale in an instant. There was no doubt that women understood each other. Men could not tell. Muyaja could not tell. However, it did not mean that Yin Shirshir could not tell. This Song Enya obviously had feelings for Muyaja. There was no way to hide her feelings. Yin Shirshir could tell at a glance. Especially at this moment, Song Enya's flustered and ashamed expression was obvious. So that was really the case. Yin Shirshir shook her head and sighed. So that's how it is. You've fallen for your cousin. Is it any of your business? Song Enya raised her head and said angrily. At this moment, she had fallen to the ground, and Yin Shirshir was talking to her condescendingly. Her aura instantly diminished. Hence, she immediately tried to get up from the ground. Yin Shirshir stretched out her leg and stepped on her hand with her sharp high heel. Song Enya screamed and retracted her hand with a pained expression. She glared at her with a pale face. You're so pitiful. Yin Shirshir mocked expressionlessly. One cousin, the other cousin. Close relatives. This is incest. It's truly shocking. You. Song Enya was so angry at her words that her face turned red and white and instantly darkened. Look, you fall in love with a man, but this man is your cousin. You can't be together in this lifetime. Was it if not pitiful? She then added unhurriedly, I'm different from you, though. I even have a child with him. As soon as she finished speaking, Song Enya was so shocked that her face turned pale and she stared at her in disbelief. Yin Shirshir was in a good mood as she admired the other's pale and colorless face. She asked airily, what about you? What about you? Cousins, close relatives, being together is against the rules of ethics. Song Enya was momentarily stunned. She stared fixedly at Yin Shirshir's face before regaining her senses. Her eyebrows and the outline of her lips. Twos, Xiao Yichen's eyebrows. At first, she did not pay attention to it, so she did not realize this. Now that she saw it, she was shocked. Could it be Xiao Yichen is Muyaja's child? This realization almost hit Song Enya to hell, and she was instantly buried in a sea of fire. Who's the wishful thinking and daydreaming? Do you think you can be with a man you love without me? Yin Shirshir sneered as if mocking her naivety. That's what's really laughable. Shut up. Shut up. You shut up. Song Enya screamed and covered her ears, not wanting to hear her mockery. Chapter 627. Song Enya's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She raised her head, feeling suffocated, and met Yin Shirshir's cold gaze. He said that he only treats you as a younger sister. If I take it to heart, he'll keep a distance from you and even cut off all contact with you. That one sentence sent Song Enya to hell mercilessly. At that moment, even her heart seemed to have stopped beating. Tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. She clenched her teeth tightly, unwilling to look up and let Yin Shirshir see her sorry state. She could only choke on her sobs. You're lying. You're lying. Brother Mu loves me the most. He would never lie to me because of you. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. Yin Shirshir was not lying. This was what Muyaja said himself back then. She was just repeating what he said. Yin Shirshir pursed her lips as she recalled how Song Enya had acted all high and mighty in front of her earlier. The thought of it infuriated her. Now that she knew that Muyaja only treated her as a younger sister, she could not take the blow and broke down. She was just a vase and very delicate. In fact, she was also a woman who held grudges. One was not a gentleman if one did not take revenge. Therefore, she planned to add another stab to Song Enya's bloody wound. It seems that you don't have much weight in his heart. He actually cut off all contact with his cousin because of a woman you said was just a game. I've really let you down for being so devoted to him. Song Enya screamed at her uncontrollably. Shut up. You be *TCH. With that, she pounced on Yin Shirshir from the ground with bared fangs and brandished claws. That shrewish posture made it seem as if she wanted to strangle her to death. At this moment, Song Inya had already lost her rationality after being provoked by Yun Shishir's words. All she wanted was to teach this B*TCH a lesson. Yun Shishir, however, did not even bother to look at her. With a slight movement of her body, she hooked Song Inya with the tip of her foot. In her fury, the Missy did not see the tripper clearly and tripped unsuspectingly, falling face first into the mud. The cement floor was filled with jagged gravel. Song Inya, who was wearing a short skirt, scraped the skin on her knees from the fall, causing numerous bloody spots to appear on them. Her palms were also scraped, and streaks of blood seeped out. She was in a sorry state. Song Inya lowered her head to take a look at the gruesome abrasions on her knees. In the Song family, she had always been a princess who had been doted on since she was young. Before Song and she was born, she was the only one, the Song. Her father, mother, doted on her, and elder brother, she, had never suffered any grievances. Even after Song and she's birth, Papa Song and Mama Song's love for her did not diminish at all. Her spoiled Song Inya, and Song Inya's. Being pampered like this, Song Inya was really spoiled like a princess. Her body was as flawless as white jade. She had always been vain and would not let herself get hurt. Now, when she lowered her head and saw the terrible injuries on her knees, she glared at Yun Shishir and screamed, "Yun Shishir, you B*TCH, shameless." Tears rolled down and wet her face. Song Inya's meticulously applied makeup was ruined by her tears. Chapter 628. In short, she was scheming and elegant. Song Inya was momentarily stunned when she heard that. Her eyes widened as she sized up the woman before her in disbelief. Her heart skipped a beat, and she gritted her teeth hard. "You B*TCH smack?" Yun Shishir raised her hand and gave her a tight slap. Song Inya's face was slapped to the side. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she held her stinging cheek in disbelief. She had been slapped by someone. Yun Shishir looked down at her coldly and sneered. "Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Yun Shishir, how dare you hit me?" Song Inya was so angry that her eyes turned red. "Smack!" Yun Shishir smiled and gave her another slap. This time, Song Inya was completely stunned. "I'll let you see if I dare to hit you or not." Yun Shishir straightened her clothes expressionlessly. Song Inya was about to flare up when she saw her elegantly turn around and leave. "Yun Shishir, stop right there." Song Inya gritted her teeth and got up from the ground to chase after her. A hint of impatience appeared on Yun Shishir's face. This Song Inya really doesn't know pain until she suffers. While the two were arguing, a waiter, who had been waiting at the port for a long time, saw the scene and locked his gaze on Yun Shishir. Seeing her black off-the-shoulder gown, silky hair, and exquisite makeup, he knew that she must be tonight's VIP guest. Hence, he hurried forward and interrupted Song Inya's unreasonable tantrum. "Hello, may I ask if you're Madam Yun Shishir?" Yun Shishir turned around and saw the man in his uniform. He looked dignified and polite, so she smiled at him. "Hello, I am. May I know who you are?" "Madam Yun, I'm the manager of Bali Restaurant. You're tonight's VIP guest, so I'm here to pick you up for dinner." Yun Shishir was stunned. Song Inya, who was behind her, was also stunned. Bali Restaurant. Even Song Inya was shocked by this. Did Yun Shishir come here to keep an appointment? In Bali, a set meal for couples was worth 13 million. Even in the whole of Beijing, this was a sky-high price. Bali was a Western restaurant that was rumored to be extremely dreamy. It was said that the dishes included 8 delicacies, accompanied by aged wine. From the small dishes to the large decorations, all of them were noble and exquisite. It was said that before the meal, they would take a 30-minute helicopter ride overlooking the beautiful scenery of Hushin Island. During the meal, they would also receive 10,000 roses. Just this alone was enough to make many women scramble for him. Being able to go on a date in Bali had become a symbol of supremacy. Who exactly was Yun Shishir meeting? Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Brother Mu? Yun Shishir was also a little surprised. However, she had already guessed who had arranged all of this. She cast a sidelong glance at Song Enya from the corner of her eye before turning to the senior waiter with a polite smile. "All right, I'll follow you." "Wait," Song Enya called out to her with a livid face. Are you on a date with Brother Mo?" Yin Shir turned around and looked at her expressionlessly. Date? Would Muyaja go on a date with her? She couldn't imagine that he would spend so much time on dates. Therefore, she was not sure if Muyaja was planning to go on a date with her. However, when she saw Song Enya's conflicted and anxious expression, she smiled and said, "Yes, so I'm going on a date with him. So, I'm going to keep my appointment. Don't follow me anymore." Chapter 629. Song Enya flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as she was about to step forward again, she was stopped by a bodyguard who appeared just in time. Bali's security was in place. After all, they had to take care of the guests' personal safety and privacy. Hence, under the bodyguard's obstruction, Song Enya could only watch as Yin Shir was escorted onto the cruise ship. The Bali Western restaurant was located on Hushin Island, and the only way to get there was via a cruise ship. Unlike the cruise ships on the lake, this one was privately owned by the Bali Western restaurant, so it was much more luxurious than the ordinary cruise ships. Hence, when Yin Shir boarded the cruise ship under the guidance of the waiter, it immediately attracted the exclamations of those who were standing at the harbor overlooking the scenery. For a moment, there were discussions of jealousy, amazement, and envy. "Oh God, is that the Bali Western restaurant's private cruise ship? Oh my God, it's so luxurious. Isn't it? I heard that this cruise ship cost a fortune. Oh God, Bali, that's my dream." Yin Shir stood in front of the railing as the cruise ship started moving. It slowly left the harbor and headed toward Hushin Island. She lowered her head and looked at the waves that kept rising. The bright starlight on the cruise ship reflected on the lake's surface, making it a beautiful sight. The silver moon on the horizon was like a hook. Standing on the deck, Yin Shir hugged her shoulders and could not help feeling a little chilly. The waiter considerately put a jacket on her. Yin Shir thanked him politely, but even with the jacket, she did not feel cold. Her heart was still cold, though. The Mews are the richest family in the capital. How can Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into his family? If you want to climb the social ladder of the Mews, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you from the bottom of his heart? He's just playing with you. Do you really think that you can climb up the social ladder and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? In this day and age, is it so justifiable to be a third party and interfere in someone else's marriage? Third party? Yin Shir's lips curled into a cold smile. What a joke. How did she become the third party? Everything that Mu Wanru originally had belonged to her. Mu Wanru was the real third party, wasn't she? She took away the token that her mothers left for her. Took away her identity. Took away her family. She had taken away her fiancé. Isn't the third party Mu Wanru? How did it become her? She of the nights to two of course of the night, to of the night, to the winds to lift her messy hair and straighten her back to it. Well, what Mu Wanru had should have belonged to her. Since that was the case, then she would take back everything that originally belonged to her, even if she didn't care for all of this. The of Yuns. Thinking of Mu Wanru's disgusting face, Yin Shir felt disgusted from the bottom of her heart. The crimes and grievances that she had to bear for more than 10 years were all in her heart. She swore that she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. The cruise ship soon sailed to the harbor of the island. There were already people waiting for them at the harbor, standing in a row. Chapter 630. There was only one private room in the restaurant. The huge private room was at least 300 square meters. When the waiter led Yin Shir into the private room, she was greeted by the extremely luxurious decorations. Just the beautiful and resplendent crystal chandelier alone was enough to tell that it was expensive. Yin Shir walked to the table and saw exquisite cutlery on the table. She picked up the chopsticks and saw that they were made of jade. They were even inlaid with diamonds and engraved with her name. Yen Shishi, it was so luxurious that it made one speechless. No wonder it was rumored that a couple's set meal at the Bali restaurant was worth tens of millions. Even every detail was exquisite and luxurious. She looked around but did not see Muyaja. Yun Shirshir turned around and asked curiously, "Who made the reservation? Why don't I see him?" She could not help but feel suspicious. What was Muyaja trying to do? He brought her here but did not see him. The waiters looked at each other, but they smiled without saying anything. Yun Shirshir saw that they were pretending to be mysterious. She raised her eyebrows slightly and decided not to think about it. She walked around the private room alone and accidentally found that there was an observation deck in the private room. Yun Shirshir could not help but be attracted by the Hubble Space Telescope on the observation deck. "Is this a telescope?" Yun Shirshir pointed at the telescope and asked. She didn't know much about astronomy, so she wasn't sure if this was a real telescope. The waiter behind her smiled and said, "Yes, I heard that there will be a meteor shower tonight. Miss Yun, do you want to take a look?" "Sure." Yun Shirshir gladly agreed. She was quite interested in this telescope. Therefore, she walked to the telescope, and the waiter quickly adjusted it for her. Yun Shirshir clumsily looked through the telescope and saw the beautiful starry sky. Incredible. Usually, when looking up at the starry sky, one could only see the scattered stars in the night sky. However, through the telescope, one could see that these stars were not of the same size. Some stars were very small as a grain of sand. However, some of the stars were very large. They were either blue or orange in color. Most of them were like diamonds embedded in the night sky, shining brightly and very charming. The stars contrasted with each other and came into view like a beautiful starry sky. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Yun Shirshir could not help but be fascinated by it. It was no wonder that many astronomy enthusiasts were fascinated by astronomy. Indeed, a starry sky like this could not help but be fascinated. Yun Shirshir was in a daze and did not notice that the waiter behind her had already left the private room. She stared at the stars in the sky in a trance. Suddenly, a bright and dazzling shooting star flashed across the camera lens. Fast, very fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Alas, Yun Shirshir was still unable to contain her excitement. It was as if this was the first time in her life that she had seen a meteor. Yun Shirshir could not help but exclaim. She looked up and said excitedly, "I saw a meteor." Turning around, Yun Shirshir wanted to announce the news excitedly, but she bumped into a warm and firm chest. Her forehead hurt a little. Chapter 631. Her gaze could not help but be drawn to the exquisite diamond on the pendant. It was meticulously carved into the shape of a shooting star. At first glance, it was as eye-catching as a shooting star. Yun Shirshir looked up in shock. Muyaja had unknowingly appeared behind her. He was wearing a black shirt and had smooth and neat black hair. On his handsome face, a pair of deep and mesmerizing eyes were quietly fixed on her. In his eyes, there was a gentleness that had never been seen from him, who had always been arrogant and cold. This rare gentleness seemed to be able to melt the coldest glacier in the world. Yun Shirshir was shocked. Could the shooting star that had flashed across the camera just now be this diamond necklace? She knew that everything that had happened tonight was probably a so-called surprise that this man had specially arranged. But what surprised her was that she did not think that this man would waste his time on a date. From what she knew, his time should be very precious. He was in charge of the huge dishing financial group and should be very busy every day. But even though she was somewhat mentally prepared, she still did not expect that he would have prepared all this for her. For a moment, she was a little confused. Could it be that he knew that he had gone too far last night? So he had prepared this mysterious date to create a surprise for her and bridge the gap between them because of what had happened last night? What she didn't know was how arrogant this man was. She was his first woman. She was also the woman that he was willing to spend time and effort to pamper. He had never put so much effort into dating before. However, this was his first time doing so. Although he had consulted Min Yu's opinion on many aspects of this date, he still did not know how to guess a woman's thoughts. What did she like? What did she not like? He had no idea. He could only rely on Min Yu's suggestions and slowly figure it out. Muyaja lowered his head to look at her. His gaze landed on her and saw that her beautiful peach blossom eyes were staring at the diamond pendant dangling in front of her in surprise. This man had meticulously prepared all this. Could it be that he felt guilty about what had happened last night? Was that why he did all this to make up for it? Yin Shirshir cursed in her heart. From time to time, she would raise the corners of her eyes slightly to size up Muyaja's expression. You like it? He opened his mouth slightly, his voice clear and deep. Yin Shirshir did not say anything. She looked at him with anger in her eyes. She thought about how bad this man was yesterday. Seeing him, her heart was filled with anger. However, her gaze once again fell on this almost suffocatingly beautiful pendant. Even though she tried her best to maintain the cold curve of her lips, she still lightly curved her lips because of this unexpected surprise. Muyaja looked at the gentle light in her eyes. She probably liked this surprise. Women should have lost their resistance to such surprises. Therefore, he held her shoulders and turned her around, wanting to put the diamond pendant on her neck. Yin Shirshir suddenly broke free from his grasp. With his closeness, her face quickly regained its indifference. In his eyes, she was still angry with him. You don't like it? Muyaja asked in a deep voice as if he was asking for her opinion. Yin Shirshir glanced sideways at the pendant lying in his palm, but she shook her head coldly. Chapter 632. How could he not see her stubbornness and going against her will? This woman was clearly still angry at him. Looking at her eyes just now, it was clear that she really liked this pendant. She was clearly throwing a tantrum with him. Muyaja's lips curled into a playful smile, so he said, If you don't like it, I'll throw it away. After saying this, without waiting for her to react, Muyaja strode to the railing of the observation deck and forcefully threw the pendant into the lake. The observation deck was very close to the lake. The strength in his hand, naturally, could not be underestimated. With one throw, the pendant disappeared without a trace. Yin Shirshir turned her eyes and just happened to see his action. Her heart fiercely trembled, and then she could not care about maintaining the reserved expression on her face. She anxiously walked to his side and looked in the direction he had thrown the pendant, but she could not see it. Her heart was filled with anger. Yin Shirshir angrily bit her lips and turned around to forcefully push him. What are you doing? HM? What's wrong with me? Muyaja looked at her with an innocent face, as if he was confused and did not understand the situation. Why are you randomly throwing the pendant that you gave me into the lake? Is it very interesting? Yin Shirshir's eyes were filled with anger and shame. You said you didn't like it. Muyaja's voice was deep, and his deep eyes seemed to silently remind her that it was because she did not like this pendant that he had thrown away. Yin Shirshir was speechless. You threw it away because I don't like it? If you don't like it, it has lost its value. The man slightly raised his arrogant chin, but his tone was matter of fact. It was as if the value of this pendant was not measured by its cost. It was measured by whether she liked it or not. If she didn't like it, then this pendant had clearly lost its value. It was not a pity to throw away something that had no value. Yin Shirshir deeply knitted her brows. She was angry and amused at the same time. She said that she didn't like it, but did she really not like it? In fact, she really liked this pendant and thought it was very beautiful, but she just didn't want to forgive him so easily. How could he not understand a woman's thoughts? She actually liked this pendant very much. I like it very much. It could be seen that he had carefully selected them. Whether it was the cutting or the polishing, every angle was very delicate. The cost of the production must be expensive. He had carefully prepared such a surprise for her, but she only wanted him to make a statement about his attitude last night. Even if it was just an apology, she would be very happy. But did he have to be so arrogant? Just because she said she didn't mean it, he threw away such an expensive pendant just like that. The most important thing was that she really liked it. Yin Shirshir stared at him expressionlessly. She was angry and annoyed, so she simply turned her head away and didn't want to bother with him anymore. She turned around in a fit of pique and no longer looked at him. She pursed her lips and looked at the calm surface of the lake, but her heart was filled with anger. When Muyaja saw this, he could not help but smile and walked behind her. A pair of long, slender legs stuck close to her skirt. Yin Shirshir turned her head and pursed her lips as she stared at him. Her eyes seemed to be warning him to keep a distance from her. It was obvious that her anger had not subsided. Muyaja could not help laughing. He knew that she must be very angry at this moment. Not only did he not keep a distance from her, he seemed to be sticking closer to her. Chapter 633. No. Yin Shirshir ignored his closeness and coldly replied. Although he said no, there was a strong sense of displeasure in his tone. Presumably, his action of throwing away the pendant had angered her. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Little liar, you're obviously angry." "How would I dare to be angry with you? The great Sio Mu." Yin Shirshir's lips curled into a cold smile as she said in a half-mocking and half-sneering tone, "You said that you don't like that pendant, but you actually like it a lot?" He lowered his eyes, and his gaze fell onto her angry face as his words pierced through her thoughts. "That's your thing. You can throw it away as you wish. What has it got to do with me?" Yin Shirshir retorted in a bad mood. But she totally didn't realize that at this moment, the two of them were so close to each other as they exchanged words. It seemed like they were flirting with each other. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile as he secretly thought that this woman was really awkward. But she was also really stupid. She didn't even use her brain to think carefully. Did she really think that he couldn't tell how much she liked that pendant? Muyaja slowly opened his palm. That necklace that he had thrown away at this moment was like a magic trick as it quietly laid horizontally in his palm. Under the bright moonlight, it emitted an enchanting and resplendent luster. In actual fact, he had long seen that her disdain wasn't because she really didn't like it. It was just a woman who said one thing and meant another when she was angry. He could tell that she liked it a lot. That action of throwing the necklace earlier was just a bluff. He didn't expect that she really thought that he had thrown the pendant into the lake. That nervous expression was completely captured by his eyes. Muija stood behind her and gently brushed her hair aside. In an instant, that porcelain white neck was exposed in front of his eyes. Muyaja's eyes heated up as his back suddenly tensed up. Her soft and tender skin was snow white and flawless, like a fine piece of art. Especially at this moment, when the light was dim, it made her skin seem even brighter. She was as beautiful as jade. She was truly as beautiful as jade. Coupled with the elegant black gown on her body, the black and white matched, giving off a forbidden seduction that came from her bones. Looking at this beautiful scene, his eyes couldn't help but become deep and serene, so much so that it implicated a certain part of his body that had quietly changed and become vigorous and hot. Yin Shirshir twisted her body, trying to break free from his grasp. He said in a deep voice, "Don't move. Don't move, or I'll do you right now." Muyaja's voice was taut with forbearance and restraint. Hearing this, Yin Shirshir didn't dare to move. There was no doubt about it. If she really moved, she would not be able to move. This man was a man of his words. He really ate her dry on the observation deck. She had already experienced this man's dominance, so there was no doubt about it. While she was feeling gloomy, she suddenly felt a trace of coldness on her neck. She couldn't help but look down. Her gaze fell on her neck, but she saw an exquisite and resplendent diamond dangling from her collarbone. It was actually the one he had thrown away earlier. Didn't he throw it away? Could it be that he was just scaring her? Yin Shirshir was stunned. She was shocked, but her lips couldn't help curling into a smile. Muyaja lowered his head and whispered in her ear word by word, "Wear this pendant for me." Chapter 634. You're not allowed to take it off. His tone was as strict as ever, domineering to the point of being unreasonable. Yin Shirshir's fingertips gently rubbed the pendant. She looked up at him and angrily said, "Unreasonable." "That's right, I'm unreasonable." Muyaja slowly pulled her into his embrace from behind as his gaze fell onto her face. He saw her slightly lowering her head as her beautiful peach blossom eyes looked at the pendant on her neck. Her fingertips rubbed it lovingly as her light pink lips formed a faint smile. "Didn't you say you didn't like it?" Muyaja couldn't help having the thought of teasing her. Yin Shirshir gave a cold snort. "I just think it's a pity to throw it away." Stubborn mouth, he lightly said. This stupid woman's mouth seemed to be very stubborn, but it could be seen that she really liked his gift. Muyaja stared at the shallow dimples on her face and couldn't help having some thoughts. He inexplicably wanted to fiercely seal her lips. Driven by this thought, he immediately took action. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her pink little mouth. Her soft and tender lips were extremely warm and soft, revealing a sweet taste that made one want more uncontrollably. Yin Shishir's eyes opened wide in astonishment. The man's kiss suddenly came, and she was not prepared at all. Her eyes opened wide in a daze as his enlarged, handsome face appeared in front of her. His deep silhouette was exquisite and handsome, making him look very handsome. Only when she looked at him from such a close distance did she discover that this man's eyelashes were excessively long. They were thick and black, like two black phoenix feathers. It was no wonder his gaze was so deep and seductive. It had to be said that this man had been blessed by the heavens since he was born. Outstanding features, a proud family background, and a shocking background. This kind of man should be sought after by many women. It was no wonder that in the capital, there were many socialites who liked him. Even his cousin was infatuated with him. Indeed, this kind of man was loved by all. His thin lips were slightly cold. Yin Shishir couldn't help but fall into a daze. She remembered that according to the physiognomy, people with thin lips were mostly fickle and overly rational. Could this man be fickle in love? She allowed him to kiss her. Her reaction was somewhat passive. She did not dare to resist too much and could only endure his domineering kiss. He kissed her fiercely and urgently. His kiss went deep in her throat. If it was possible, he probably wanted to swallow her whole. Yin Shishir's thoughts couldn't help but drift away inexplicably until the man hugged her waist tightly. While gently kissing her lips, he said, "That day, you blacklisted me. Was it because Mu Wanru said something to you?" Yin Shishir was stunned and slowly opened her eyes. However, she saw that Muyaja had also opened his eyes and was looking at her. His eyes were asking her silently, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Muyaja grabbed her chin with a puzzled look on his face. At first, he only suspected that Mu Wanru had run to Yin Shishir to bluff and claim that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. Too many women were sensitive, especially a stubborn woman like Yin Shishir. She couldn't accept it, but it was just a suspicion. What had happened back then that made her blacklist him for no reason? He still had to ask her. His question reminded her of Mu Wanru's pregnancy.